indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Shoutcraft Kings right here on twitch.tv/TotalBiscuit. My name is TotalBiscuit and I'm joined by the Greater Monster Energy Element. That's too hard to say at 8 a.m. Too hard, can't do it.
But can you drink it, Total Biscuit?
I mean, I can. Gives me a bit of a headache, I have to admit, but it's the sort of thing that you can drink. You are well accustomed to such things. The Greater Monster Energy Elemental himself, Mr. Jeff in Control Robinson.
I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for having me. We have this amazing mixture, our energies combined for awesome games. So I'm just here to bear witness. That's basically my job here.
Pretty much. We have some great games coming your way, and that can somewhat be guaranteed. You might be saying, well, no, you can't guarantee that. You can't guarantee that. Well, I can tell you this. $10,000.
Yeah, someone on Twitter
10,000.
said a mistake.
Yeah, not a mistake. Totally real. The prize pool has been increased twofold to $10,000. That's $500 a map. That's a lot of money a map. But that's all thanks to Blizzard and their burgeoning sweaty war chest. It's a lot of money in that. Too much. More than they even know what to do with.
I think it's really cool that we already see the impact of it, though. Like, they talked about how if they sold enough of it, it was going to spill over into StarCraft 2 operations, and a lot of people were like, well, that's vague, I don't know where that's going. Well, here you go. It just made this into a monthly $10,000 tournament, which is kind of on par with things like Home Story Cup and stuff like that, which is a big deal. So every month you get a bigger and better Shoutcraft. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And have a look at these rankings and tell me that these guys aren't chomping at the bit to get a piece of that. Nurchio already now the most winningest player. Up to 17 total wins, $4,250 in prize money, just ahead of Innovation, just ahead of him at 16 wins, and Beyond nipping at the heels at 15. These guys could very easily today double their money if they play well enough. Think about it, $4,000, huh? You only need 8 maps to get up to that now. That's doable. Nurchio's done that streak. Innovation's done that streak before.
Yeah, they've done it, but I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. It seems like every time we see it now, though, it's just such a hard streak of players playing so well that it is possible, but I feel like if you come away from this with 3 or 4 maps, you're doing very, very well. So
I would say so. You are without question. It's a lot of pressure to be able to pull that kind of thing off. To be able to pull off multiple wins in a row with no safety net against players that you have no prep against whatsoever. It's the hardest tournament there is in Control. Some people say it's the most unfair, and you know what? I gleefully agree with that assessment.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's why I like the hike up in map pool win, too, because it is a big deal to win 3 or 4 of these maps, and to be paid accordingly is also awesome. I mean, you talk about $4,000, that's cool, but I mean, $2,000 for 4 games or whatever that's pretty good, too, I think. They're doing all right.
I'd say so. I think they'll be just fine with that amount of money. Bunny right now is just fine with that amount of money and would love to make a little bit more. Well, he did pretty well last month, if you recall correctly. Dispatches of some pretty top quality players. He actually dealt quite nicely with Nurchio, Classic, and Marsa, which was, I think, unexpected for a lot of people. They didn't necessarily see players of that caliber going down to Bunny, especially not 3 in a row. But he proved something. He proved something that day. Proved that he belongs on the throne. The question is, can he stay there?
I believe you have sent someone that could perhaps very, very much so galvanize that answer. I wonder.
Indeed. Something of a sink or swim situation, I think. A royal assassin, perhaps. A good way to describe it. Because, of course, when you play the game of Shoutcraft, you win or you die. There certainly is no middle ground. And his first challenger is coming right now. If you wish to stick around in my tournaments and win yourselves a lot of money, then you best be ready for anything that can come your way. From lands afar, or indeed from South Korea. Man or machine. That is the wrong name, because it's actually Innovation. There we go. It is not Masa, it is Innovation. Well, it's a good solid start and screw-ups there. Hopefully that will be the only one. Hopefully that will be the only one.
That's it.
Yes. We won't screw up
Innovation
anymore.
is in just gigantic form right now. He just won GSL versus the World, which, you know, he had a tough path in, actually. He did not have some kind of, like, couple of foreigners, and there he is in the finals type of thing. It was... No, he beat a bunch of the absolute best, and the way he beat them is the more impressive part for me, because he made some players look kind of bad. Like, when you're at that level that you play that well and you make other top Koreans look bad, you're at some kind of weird god stance right now.
Yeah, something along those lines. It was pretty ridiculous. And he's done very well in this tournament, but also, he's been in almost every one of them. He's missed, I think, only one, and his success has been very mixed. Very mixed.
Yeah. No, I remember one of the, like, it was 2 or 3 Shoutcrafts ago where we were like, oh, my innovation, mega hype, mega amazing, and then he lost, like, I think it was to Nurchio or something, some Zerg just kind of ran him over, and we're like, okay, well, that was cool.
Yeah, after the first 10-player streak, which he's never equaled, and no one has since.
Yeah.
He's shown a bit of vulnerability, but it's a very hard tournament. It is totally possible. Even the machine can drop best of 1. We'd like to, of course, hear what you think during the show. We're going to be picking out the best tweets from the hashtag Shoutcraft. That is the hashtag Shoutcraft. And they'll be displayed on the screen at appropriate downtime when we look to fill time and not, you know, talk. Because talking's hard, and it's early in the morning. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Don't want to keep you waiting any further. The carnage begins. Welcome to an Odyssey. An Odyssey LE. To the northwest position, I bring you your reigning king. In the red trunks, playing Terran, currently with 3 wins under his belt, it is Bunny. Versus his opponent to the southeast position. In the blue trunks, also playing Terran, the machine, Innovation.
And if we were betting people, this would be my horse in the race to go the distance. You talked about what it could mean to win 8 or 9 maps. Innovation is, and this is kind of the fun time of year. You know, it's August. We're at mid-August at this point. We're coming up on the ramp up towards BlizzCon. A lot of these players that have their sights set on that are really dialing it up for good reason. BlizzCon's like life-changing money, so Innovation is one of the comments we kind of talked about in Korea was he's kind of looking to be Beyond of last year. Beyond hit a certain caliber of play last year where he was just better than everybody, just flat out. Everybody in Korea, he was better than
much. Yeah. There wasn't really much argument there. And at this point, there's not really a lot of argument at the moment either. You know, he's performing very well in pretty much every Korean tournament that they can throw at him. You know, he didn't win GSL last time around, but that's kind of the way the cookie crumbles. It doesn't matter how good a player you are, you just can get a really rough group and a really rough bracket, and that's enough to knock you out of the event. Not to say that you're bad or that the people that won were bad and that you're better, but that's just the way that the chips fall sometimes.
Yeah. It was a fun GSL. It's Gumio actually kind of, I guess one of the reactions in Korea was, if Gumio can do it, why can't I type of thing? Because Gumio's not known as one of the more incredibly dominant players. Like when he plays a series, it doesn't feel like he just, you know, smothered his opponent mechanics. It's more of a like he's crafty, he busts out interesting builds, he plays offbeat. So he was able to make that work for a GSL championship, and it really inspired a lot of people. So
yeah, and honestly, it's a very entertaining way of making things go, and that's a nice little start here for Innovation. He gets the grenade prior to Gumiho being able to fire back there, and that actually gives him free reign to kill this SCV. Already, nice little advantage here for Innovation as he can delay the expansion on the low ground. A little bit cheeky there by Bunny to do that, but note what's going on Innovation's side. Note what is missing.
An expansion, yeah. He's going to go with that. Oh, I was going to say Banshee, actually. Just took the words right out of my mouth. But it's going to be a Raven first, which kind of suggests push. But to your point, this is going to be a nice little kind of response from Bunny, but Innovation getting that advantage by killing that SCV was a big deal, because he only had the one Reaper out. He was otherwise kind of building inside his main, swapping things out. But now the Cyclone shows up, and if you look up, it's the Cyclone of Bunny that'll be the response, and it's kind of ages away. Nope, never mind, that's the first one. That's the second one that's coming out, so that's good. But on the flip side, man, I'm actually a little bit thrown off, because on Innovation I was like, well, he's surely going to push, but he's going Raven, even despite the faster expansion, which is a little bit...
it's a bit of an oddity.
It's a bigger plan.
Yeah, if you're going with such an aggressive tech up prior to your expansion in a mirror match like this, you really want to do damage. And yeah, it was kind of cool that the expansion was delayed a little bit, but that was by no means crippling. You know, It's got about 10, 15 seconds at most out of it. And now Innovation's forces have been driven back because ultimately there are 2 Cyclones on the map and 7 Marines here for Bunny, which is a not insignificant number of units.
Yeah, and so again, the Raven kind of like poses the question. I thought it was going to be the beginning of some kind of weird, cheeky auto turret push or something like that. So maybe that is the case, but seeing the Cyclone coming out from Bunny, he's going to kind of abandon that concept, or it's just a little bit of a chess match back and forth. But Bunny's the one that comes out slightly ahead, and I do want to caution, like, I kept seeing this happening where Innovation would be slightly behind, and then for really no other reason than just that his management of economy is redonkulous. Well, here is that push, by the way. I'm going to kind of cut myself short. It's a bit weird. The Viking seems odd. It can land and does pretty devastating damage in low unit count situations like this. And then that Raven with the auto turret gives a lot of push. So this is a pretty scary push here.
There's a siege tank in the defense composition and a bunker. Like, I don't see this really doing much. The siege tank already sort of firing away and the auto turret goes down. A lot of firepower being focused on that bunker. A lot of SCVs haven't been pulled to repair. The bunker will finally fall.
With so many Marines. And on the flip side, Innovation's taking a lot of damage actually from these Cyclones. They basically lift off the natural. There is another Raven over here. So ultimately, I don't think this is where Innovation dies. Even the Scanna see the high ground, but he's going to use those Marines. They just kind of win enough time down here. But look at the delaying. We talked about how the natural for Bunny was going to go down earlier. You made a really good point here, too, saying that that bunker was a good anchor because, you know what? He lost the bunker, a couple of Marines, maybe. Who cares? Those are all disposable.
They're very disposable. You know, ultimately, he's trading a small amount of money for time, and time is what he needed. Innovation's push, I don't know. I mean, without Stim, without Medevac, without siege tank support, that push actually didn't really look all that scary. I mean, when you have an anchored defensive siege tank, and hold that thought, Bunny gets caught out by a Cyclone flank from Innovation, who's looking to try and take out the other Cyclone. He's going to get it. Oh, wow. He actually dropped an auto turret to intercept that Cyclone on the way out. So there was really nowhere for it to go. Innovation shutting down a good amount of units for pretty much nothing there. You got to give him credit for that. And you look at all of that and how wonky it is, and weirdly enough, like, Innovation is still in a pretty good position, but he's behind in terms of army. Thing is, if we're looking at the composition of Bunny, it's a very defensive one. He's building Vikings. He's not building Medevacs. His Marine count isn't very high. He doesn't have Stim yet. He's not even started it.
Correct, and it's definitely like a kind of opening. This is a bit awkward of a timing. Innovation's going to trade back out at least one, maybe not both of the... Well, no, it looks like this could get away. But to your point, I was just going to say, this is not much in the way of a pushing army, but of course, as I say that, that's exactly what he's going to do.
Sure.
4 tanks are very lethal, but to your point, no Stim, no Medevacs, so the staying power of this force, I feel like this is... Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's pushing off Innovation's third. And it can't breach a ramp or something like that. You really can't attack super well. But in TVT, if you can get in the right position and just have 4 or 5 tanks siege up, especially in this kind of weird pre-Stim era where Innovation's just now getting Stim, but his unit counts that can kind of use that Stim is very low, that could be lethal, and that's exactly what he's trying to do. Oh, he baits out the auto turrets. It's nice, because he can just back away. They die so fast.
It's a good move. Although these Ravens do have a little bit more energy than that, so they should be okay for the time being. But yeah, getting those out of the way is good. Innovation pulls back to a different position.
Yeah.
Currently, he can't safely place his third. It's a bit dicey to do that. And Bunny eating some bad siege tank shelling. That's a nasty position. Takes 3 hits for free before the counterfire comes in. But Innovation's in an even worse defensive position. His tanks aren't deployed. He doesn't have enough anti-air to deal with the air superiority of Bunny, so he can't really safely stop his medevacs from being sniped here.
And that's a huge deal in TVT. This is something that I really liked seeing in a lot of the high-level TVTs we've seen recently, where if you get that air superiority, one of the things that kind of almost happens in stages is, like right now, as you said, picking off the spotters, that's a big deal. But what you add after that is like a couple of liberators, and now you're starting to push tank lines back and really take positions as well. And if you have these 4 or 5 Vikings, what oftentimes happens on the other side is a player like Innovation or whoever is the Terran in that spot is just like, you know what? He has all those Vikings. I can't compete with it, so I give up.
Innovation's just got around him. He's sort of baited him into position. He's forcing Bunny's army backwards, and that army's actually surprisingly bruised up. But Innovation now with these Stim Marines is just going to go straight at the third base, which does have decent defense, though. I mean, there's a double line of tanks. This is going to be a bit messy, and honestly, this was something that was seen coming. But economic damage has been done here, and there are still some Marines left. We might see that go down. There we go. The cleanup is coming in from behind. 8 workers killed, though, which in the mirror does make a pretty big difference. Actually gives Innovation that economic advantage, and in the process, it secures his third base, having forced that army back.
You hit the nail on the head. It's the twofer. He gets the expansion down safely. He pulls back the forces of Bunny. And the weird thing about TVT that's so different from the other matchups is it's an extremely lethal matchup. So we saw like 10 Marines and a medevac go down, and we're like, oh, it's, you know, those are armies lost. But it almost doesn't even matter. Those guys are so replaceable. They're so finite that it's totally fine. And you can see Innovation's push coming back around here, and it just doesn't seem to be missing anything because that's the nature of this beast. Both players doing a good job, by the way, having spotter units. That push, the defense you talked about, was made possible by the random SCV that just kind of intercepted the units out there.
That's a lot of auto turrets going down right there. That's going to absorb quite a lot of tank fire and do a lot of damage as well. One goes down, second one goes down as well. That's essentially for free, trading out that energy. And Innovation getting a bit of a better position as a result of that. And there was a larger number of tanks accompanied by a sensor tower, and now Innovation, regardless of that, has been able to push on thanks to the auto turrets. But I'm worried about that air dominance right here that Bunny has, but he does lose several Vikings to a very nice and accurate stim there by Innovation, and that third base is taking some heavy fire.
I'm liking the chances of our assassin here, Total Biscuit. The tank count's just so high. He is hitting that orbital. Yes, he lost air superiority a while ago, but with those Vikings going down, as you pointed out, it's starting to become a little bit more of a feasible matchup in that way. He's still not going after. It's just Medevacs coming up on the production tab. But with this orbital,
on the way.
He's just got to lift it. He's just losing money. He's not minding really.
He wants to hold it because he's got the 2 Liberators, and he's just deployed them. Those are the potential game changers right there. There's nowhere near enough Marines to stop it, and that will force that back in the first step forward. Bunny takes full advantage of it. He's going to rout these forces completely.
Wow. I don't mind the caster curse moment there where I'm like, okay, I like his chances, and it's about as that I say that.
He held them there. He did it on purpose. He knew it was coming, and as a result of holding that CC there, he was able to make sure that Innovation overcommitted and was then punished by the switch to Liberator.
And still, this is that Innovation effect, though. So that whole army gets cleaned up, but look at what happens when you give Innovation even just an inch. You're like, oh man, that economic damage, that must be, you know, that's bad, but he loses his whole army. Nah, he's up 30 supply.
Yeah.
He's coming back out on the map. He's the one establishing a 4th. So even though he loses the army, that time, that trade-off was hugely beneficial for our Innovation.
I don't like this, though. Innovation is completely outnumbered. He needs to back off with this. This is not the time to engage at all with this army. Gets out, he will potentially lose a medevac or 2 and also a tank in the process, and possibly even a second. That was unnecessary, but he took less damage than he could have. He needs to now set up around the 3rd, but he's baited out the army. Innovation goes in again, but Bunny is not going to fall for that again. He leaves the Vanguard at home just to make sure that doesn't happen, and that tank's actually just going to get caught and killed now. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Bunny's not going to let that happen. Innovation now trying to maneuver with a smaller force, which is rolling the dice. If this gets caught out and destroyed, then his 3rd base is open to destruction.
So if we just take kind of a moment and look, still the supply advantage for Innovation. He's been losing a lot of units, so I started to get kind of concerned, because if you see tanks getting picked off, that is the kind of thing that even if you're ahead in supply, can switch it in favor of your opponent. But he has a comparable number of tanks. Air superiority still in favor of Bunny. We have not seen, oh wow, a couple of poking and proddings here on the left side, but like you said, the Vanguard left it back at home, something to respond. But Innovation's going to poke up into the main, and it seems that, okay, there's the reaction from Bunny. He's going to come swinging over here. And now Innovation's in a tough spot. The left side actually loses a medevac. The other one does skirt by for now.
Yeah, doesn't get much done there. Yeah, it's solid. That's a Planetary Fortress. He's not going to be able to do anything with that. And he gets a couple of Marines for free on the Watchtower, but that's really about it. And steps forward to try and get the tanks, but that was a little bit of a bait. Innovation, however, not able to capitalize on that, just slightly out of position. And now the 2 armies are massing That air superiority issue not really a factor anymore. And who's going to get it first? They both just run into each other. This is going to be a bloodbath. Shelling on both sides here. The tank count is just too damn high, though, for Bunny here. There's no way Innovation can break that.
No, not a break at all. Both players do trade up their Marines, though, which gives advantage again to the defensive tanks, but Innovation losing some more tanks to the crafty spreading of Bunny, and Bunny all of a sudden closes that supply gap, still down in supply, but without any tanks in a huge position to defend. Look at Innovation making the right choice, though. He goes down to the Orbital as his third. His fourth base, as you point out, is a planetary, so it's a little bit more of a, like, okay, you can kind of withstand. And all the while, by the way, a very cool, cheeky little move came out from Innovation where he dropped only 8 surviving Marines behind to harry the back lines and delay reinforcements. And that, once again, wins time and space. And every time Innovation wins time and space, he looks to have a bigger army than his opponent. He just keeps doing that.
And just, here's the thing that has never happened in the process of all of this, and it's really important to know. Bunny never rebuilt those destroyed workers. He's on 47 versus 70. He's been harried and harassed, and he's been focusing so much on trying to get the bigger army to beat Innovation that, in fact, he's now fallen behind in both army supply and economy. Despite the fact that we've been looking at battles won by Bunny, none of them have actually turned into any feasible and tangible advantage.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things about StarCraft is, especially even in the TVT matchup, and okay. And now, by the way, your superiority in hand here. Well, no, it's going to be a bit of a clash.
Yeah.
For Innovation. He's got the economy, as you pointed out, though, to be able to outlast it. He gets the first few volleys, and now it's 3 versus 2. But this is a tank line that doesn't get broken. Both these armies, they don't do it. But to your point, it's been Innovation that's been out-harassing Bunny, which cannot happen. If you're facing Innovation, you have to out-harass him, and then you're maybe on equal footing. If he's out-harassing you, then you see what's happening here. He's reached 200. He's the one with a 3-3 tech on the Marines. It's something else worth pointing out. It's actually Bunny's Marines that are lacking 1 armor upgrade, which is a big...
Here come the Liberators, and there's not much air dominance anymore to stop this. This tank line is going to be broken as a result. Innovation knows he's going to step forward and take full advantage of this, and this right now is where Bunny starts to fall apart. Innovation waited slowly, gently. This is how a life is taken, slowly just bleeding out as a result of the harassment and patience of Innovation. He doesn't sleep, he doesn't drink, he doesn't have to. He lives forever, and he can outlast Bunny, and that's exactly what has happened here. Despite it looking really dicey for a while, the Machine God has finally brought forth his ministrations upon the hapless Bunny.
Yeah, Bunny had a successful drop in the background, but it doesn't matter. He's going to tap out here to the muscle and might of Innovation, and Total Biscuit. I know it's literally our first match, but I begin to ask myself who can stop that level of play. If he does that, it is best of 1, so someone can get a sneaky one past him perhaps. But you know what? It's funny because I catch myself, even as I say, we're like, wow, someone can cheese him. Nobody cheeses in Shoutcraft Kings.
Not for $500, they don't. It's not worth the risk. Like, it was interesting when we first started this tournament that people assumed it was going to be a cheese fest, and it ended up being the exact opposite of that. And the more money we put in, the less cheese there is.
Yeah. It's just like, you want to see straight up awesome games that can give you a best of 5 feel and a best of 1? Well, here you go. I mean, that's what ends up happening. But with Innovation, I'm going to do it. I'm going to once again dare to believe. I'm going to let my heart bleed a little bit here and say somebody has to be looking at him and say, no. My best chance is not to play a long game with that.
Yeah. Yeah, because really, right now, he's facing up potentially against the entire lineup of the tournament. All of them. Every last person. One of them has to be thinking that. Like, what shot can I take?
Yeah, you'd think, right?
Yep. Also, I'd like to give a big shout out to Blizzard, because we're in game right now. Look at this. Live now, watch Shoutcraft Kings. That's pretty cool of you. Cool. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. You know what's also cooler than the fact that they funded this extra prize pool with a wonderful, wonderful war chest. That is what they're currently running at the moment. The war chest allows you to unlock a bunch of cool cosmetic content by completing some challenges and, of course, paying some money. So if you're looking for some skins, there's, I think, 40 plus new skins for units.
They're gorgeous, too, by the way. They're really good-looking skins.
They are pretty cool. Pretty cool.
They make stuff look pretty cool. That was my initial draw to even Diablo as a young 12-year-old in Control or whatever. I looked at that and I was like, well, a cool version of the Devil. I've never seen something like that, so I must play it. And then the rest is history. They keep making cool stuff.
You know what? Let's add to the list because, of course, a lot of money on the line. I'm going to add to the win streak the amount of money that's actually been won, $500. We'll keep track of it. I could do multiplication. This is not hard at all.
On streaming.
Indeed. That's why some people wonder, hey, why did you get rid of the King's Bounty? Because I'm bad at maths and so are half the viewers and they didn't understand it, basically. It's simple as that. Simple as that. Oh, man. Praise the Omnisire. That was the machine god in action right there. The sacred unguents are obviously being applied. The question is whether or not he'll be able to continue to do that, because we've been hurt before in Control. We have seen this happen before. Innovation is a living god, but he is up against some of the toughest players in the world. And the next one I'd actually love to introduce to you right now, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. Please do.
Good. Yeah, you should enjoy this one. You should absolutely enjoy this one. But I'd also like to remind people they can get involved in the conversation and get their comments put up on screen if they don't suck. Tweet the hashtag Shoutcraft, and we have our wonderful administrator Olivia who will be checking through the hashtag to find some of the best. However, the next challenger coming on the field, one of yours in Control, one of your preferred races, I believe. Also one of the best in the world, a multiple world champion, because we don't mess around here on Shoutcraft Kings. This is an online tournament that punches with the best of them. And he is one of the best. He's one of the Zest.
And that is a sick matchup. This is a matchup as old as time. Zest seems to be like, it's funny, he's slid into this weird underdog position, whereas he, like Beyond before him and Innovation now, and Innovation earlier as well, by the way, has hit this gear before, but Zest has at times, like you said, been a world champion where he hit a level of play that was unobtainable to just about everybody else. And now people just doubt that. They're like, no, he's not that good. You know, like it's a weird popular thing to hate on Zest. Yet Zest was able to beat both the Koreans at Home Story Cup and make a name for himself there. And now in the Korean ladder and in Korea, he's one of the hardest workers. A lot of people are talking about him. And he's not, I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's still not even on a team.
Yep.
So he's just out there representing himself, playing StarCraft because that's what he does for a job. He's like some kind of grisly old Bruce Willis character.
Yeah. He used to be a good old Katie Rolster player, one of the most feared Pro League teams in the world. As it stands, well, we have a player that recently has been on quite the tear against Terran. 3-2 Gomiho, 3-1 Euthermal, 4-2 Beyond, 2-0 Maru, all within the space of a week. But there is one player that he did fall to quite recently. Just a couple of days ago, in fact. Innovation in a best of 3.
And everyone's been losing Innovation. So that the part that he lost to Innovation is not the shocker. But he is, Protoss is the trickster race. It is a best of 1. So I'm gonna do that little thing where I squint my eyes and look at this and say, Zest could do it. Now Zest does some weird, like the pre-World Zest 2 was this just come in and kind of like Innovation, just outplay you and win. Not really a cheeser, not really a Gumio type player where he's just crafty. But lately, we're seeing more proxy Stargates. We're seeing more little cheeky dark shrines out there. Does he mix it up? Of course the answer is no, because like you said, there's $500 on the line and everyone's going to play completely straight up. But what if, John? What if?
Well, anything could happen, frankly. And that's the important thing to note in a tournament like this. And with so much money on the line, it is the kind of time to maybe break out a 6 strategy, something unexpected.
We say that. The funny thing, though, this is Acolyte. So this is the good news here, and I believe the format is the loser picks the map, correct?
It is.
This makes sense.
Sorry, the winner picks the map.
Oh, the winner picks the map. Interesting.
Yeah. The winner does pick the map. Bear in mind, it's on a rotation, so we have that 5 maps, and once one is used, you can't pick it again until everything's been used up. So it's a potential that this was not an ideal choice for Innovation.
Okay. Well, I will. I want to talk about something about this map with Protoss, but I'll let you introduce the players.
Indeed. The challenger on Acolyte LE. To the northeast position in the style and hot pink trunks, ladies and gentlemen, not afraid. And why should he be? Because he's the mighty Zest. Versus his opponent to the southwest position, the Machine God. In the blue trunks, our current reigning king of the hill. And now tied for most winningest player, looking to pass in Nurture once again in this eternal rivalry. Playing Terran. Or should I say the god of Terran, Innovation.
And Innovation can go with that CC first here, as we can see, a macro opening. So that is what Acolyte does. It gives you that pocket natural in the back of your base, and then a very defensible third, as you can call it, just below the ramp. It's just a narrowed space. There's no ramp to go up and down, that kind of stuff. And then even a fourth base is fairly obtainable, but of course, your fourth base either stretches you out a little bit or gets you closer to your opponent. But the story I want to tell here that I do find very interesting is Neeb at GSL versus the World really wanted this map, and he wanted this map against Terrans because he believes it's broken right now, that you basically just go 3-base carrier with cannons against Terran, and that was one of the maps he was able to take against TY, no less, in that best of 5 series. So I don't know that it's caught fire enough that someone like Zest will be that risky, because that's pretty crazy. But that's the kind of thing you would want to do against Innovation. Like we saw, Bunny just engaged, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to make normal composition. I'm not really going to harass. I'm going to defend your harass, and then I'm going to just win that way. No, Innovation is just, he's a head and shoulders better than everybody else at getting stuff out.
Sure. This is a bit of a classic build when it comes to going CC first, immediately followed up with 3 naked barracks, because you want units, you really need them. You can't, against Protoss, you can't really risk not having them, because if there are Acolytes in your mineral line, you don't have those Marines after going CC first, you are in serious, serious trouble. If you choose not to wall off, which players often do, you know? Because really, you put your stuff up front, and then a ranged Protoss unit just comes up and starts picking away at it. That's not really an ideal position to be in.
No. That's usually death.
Yeah, generally not a good idea.
It also defends against Stargate stuff too, like oracles and things like that. But a very interesting thing happened here. This SCV was allowed to stay for a very long time, and because of which it has scouted the Robo. So is the Robo a feint? I believe so. We see a Stargate going down in place of that. I think it was a canceled gateway. Now, it's a bit interesting because as you pointed out with this opening, it's not like he's not going to have Marines. He's going to have a crap ton of Marines, which is already inherently the answer to Stargate tech. The question is, will they be in the right place? Because if an Oracle shows up to a mineral line that doesn't have a Widow Mine, which it won't because of this heavy barracks opening, and doesn't have Marines in it, well, then that's like game-ending damage immediately. And that's part of the reason why Protoss is the salt-generating race. A lot of people are like, well, this thing showed up and killed me. You talked about Acolytes. Yep. It can also be Oracles.
Yes, it absolutely can. The early game tech choices for harassment with something that just is high damage and dangerous, and something that needs a specific counter with Protoss is frankly too damn high, at least in the opinion of a lot of people. Yeah. And Oracle is one of those things. Oh, don't have at least 5 Marines in the mineral line? Well, sucks to be you, because all your SCVs are dead now.
Yeah, and that's the lethality, the immediate impact these units can have. But as you can see, Innovation, being that well-oiled machine, has the engineering bay finishing. I imagine he'll very shortly here round out to, well, hey, before we get there, there's a Mothership Core just now pops out. The Adept buys a little bit of time, and that little bit of time is all it needs, as by the time these Marines get to this ramp, there will be a Photon overcharge. Yeah,
and he doesn't want to overcommit because he'll lose a couple of Marines that way, just like that, really. Yeah. Almost lose, and nice pick off there. Just saying, hey, you know what, we can actually get all of them. I could totally do that, and that was a really nice move. You know, Zester's not going to lose that Adept. Really solid stuff.
These business threats are going to finish literally, basically the second the Oracle could show up, and there it is. It shows up, and...
Oh my god, the turret actually goes up. Oh, and Zest did not expect that. He thought he got it.
Still gets 3 kills, by the way, which is
and gets out alive, which is impressive. That's the level of skill we're looking at here.
Gets out alive, which is a big deal. That's a huge part of the meta right now. It needs to be able to do that revelation on the forces for a while. I don't know if you caught this on camera, by the way, but a probe at the tower actually killed the wounded Marine that was retreating.
I did not see that. That's not the sort of thing I do usually pay attention to. What do you think about this early Colossus? Like, this, for the longest time anyway, in 2017, has not really been a thing.
I like the back and forth in the tech here. He shows Robo. It's a bit of a feint. Of course, Innovation still covers his bases against that Stargate. Stargate shows up. It's not really the answer. And look at this. This is the big impact here now, too. This revelation on this Medivacs, or at least he's just kind of showing, he's like, hey, I see you. trying to deter it.
Yeah.
He's going to show up to that Colossus. Now, of all the other techs, if you take that fast third, he would otherwise be warping in like Adepts or Stalkers right now and not have the Colossus. And these Marines would probably get away just fine or even trade out favorably. But with the Colossus, Total Biscuit, there's the chance now for our Protoss player Zest here to be like, nope, you actually can't do anything. So he gets away with like a double forge follow-up, which I really like.
And that move from Zest was excellent. Unless the player would have just dropped the Revelation and got out of there, because you're dealing with boosted Medivacs, a very badly damaged Oracle. You're putting it at risk. But he says, no, what? I can fly alongside you. I can keep an eye on you, and I'll only use my Revelation at the last possible moment when I feel like you're actually going to attack. I can make the maximum use out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Very nicely done. Really slick play. Again, the sort of thing that you would expect from a player the caliber of Zest, who has had a bit of a fall-off lately, but is starting to really resurge, I've noticed. And that's very exciting.
Yes. And to kind of put a cap on your point, Total Biscuit, the subtlety of what happened here as well, because of the smart decisions in his basically like information denial, he's like, hey, I see your drop coming. You probably don't want to show up. That means the 2 Colossus of Zest, at least so far, have gone undetected as far as I can tell. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but so far
I don't believe they've been seen up until this point, unless there's been a cheeky scan, which I don't think there has been. I mean, Ino doesn't even have info on the 3rd at this point, so no, those Colossi are blind Colossi. That's not the sort of thing you want to be surprised by.
No, it reflects in what Innovation's doing. There's no second starport just yet. Of course, he'll come around to it, but if he knew that there's already 3 Colossus out, it wouldn't be that he would mosey on to it. He'd be racing for survival. And as that Colossus count gets higher and becomes more and more undetected, it once again shifts the initiative in favor of Zest. So he's following up with the Templar Archives. This is also something that's kind of fallen off in Korea. People are not going Storm as much right now. So there's the Scouting Marine. It does see the Colossus, and we'll see the shift in build from Innovation here probably pretty soon. He's getting ship weapons upgrades. It's good for the...
he already started that before he saw the Colossi, which is a very interesting choice from him. But we noticed that really not a lot of anti-A's, just going the double Liberator at the moment. Hasn't added a second starport in yet. What interests me really is that Zest actually doesn't have an awful lot to ward off those kind of units. Like, it's...
Right.
He's only just got around to Stalkers, and they don't have Blink yet. In fact, he's not even researching Blink, so how do you ward off those air units from just sniping off the Colossi?
It'll be tough. It's got to be down to positioning. And I love that from Innovation here. He sees that this is where the 4th base was planned to be. He's like, nope, not today. So Zest, to your point, is going to have to go somewhere else. He's got Blink Stalkers, so he's got the ability to engage with it eventually, but right now, no way. He can't go down that ramp.
No, he can't. And thankfully, he doesn't really have to. The Liberation Zones are static. They can say, right, I'm going to deny this 4th, but there are other places. Zest already has a probe out on the potential position. Revelation's down, so Zest knows exactly where this is. He's got 10 seconds till Storm, and he has currently 2 Templar out. Swapping in 2 more. They won't have the energy just yet, but the longer Innovation waits, the worse this can get. But Inno is going straight for Fusion Core, which in this case can mean BCs, but it's more likely to mean the range increase for that large counter Liberators, which is crucial against a Colossus force.
Yep, I think he's just going to double down on that range. This missile trait, by the way, placement is incredible, but it's not going to be enough to drop the Warp Prism alone. Here's a big warping of Zealots in the backfield. This is really hard on Terran players. You talk about that Vanguard TVT, less common here, and this is in the back pocket expansion, so that's shut down immediately.
Yeah.
Going after the missile threat so they can perhaps even evacuate from here. It's
I like it.
Liberators that come back to try and defend, but this wins so much space, Total Biscuit.
It does. I think that Warp Prism is probably going to fall. There's too many missiles going that way, and Zest knows it, so he doesn't bother to pick up. He says, you're going to have to come out and clean out 10 Zealots, and that's going to be a pain in the arse regardless, especially with a Marauder Heavy Force that just stimmed. That actually resulted in a lot of Marauders getting killed there unnecessarily. So actually the value of this, these are 2-2 charged Zealots, has been insane. They actually beat the reinforcing army straight up in a fight because of that overstim and the sudden impact of charge. So that has been an incredible investment from Zest, in my opinion. And he got his 4th behind all of that too.
He got his 4th, and there's a huge tech change that is so important. He's going to be facing so many Liberators. That advanced ballistics upgrade is finishing up right now.
Yep.
If you don't have Tempest, you asked this question earlier, Total Biscuit, you're dead. You just are. I mean, I don't even care about Blink Stalker and Storm. There's eventually going to be a fight where you're going into like 8 or 9 Liberators, and it takes them about 3 seconds flat to clear out the anti-air.
Yep.
But with Tempest now, again, the initiative shifts over to Zest. You cannot siege him anymore. If you stick around and play static, he will be the one that just through attrition deteriorates your army. And then when you unsiege up, Storm, Blinkstalker, Colossus comes down on your gullet. It's just so great seeing him play this level.
Yep, this is going really, really well so far. Looks like the Tempest did take some damage from something. Try to figure out what, maybe an errant Viking or something along those lines. It did take a hit, so I think Innovation is aware of the presence of that.
Oh.
Currently trying to siege up the third base. Can't really do it. There's a well-placed photon cannon preventing that from happening. In the meantime, there is some harassment going on as my camera unfortunately just lost its mind. There we go. Fix that. Come on, get over there.
Yeah, he's just shaving off zealots. If you kill his warriors, he's like, fine, I'll just we'll do it the old-fashioned way. They're walking across the map. The nice thing about Acolyte, a lot of bases, but that also, in the smart thing about the balance of the map, there's a lot of entrances to those bases. So Terran players reluctant to, leave behind defenses, and we're gonna have a...
Yeah, that's a big one. I wouldn't want to run into that. That's a lot of firepower. Aggressive blink forward, knowing just how many. A little bit late on those force fields. Could have trapped some units on the ground. Didn't quite manage to get that. Those Colossi proving to be dangerous in this position and well upgraded. We're about to see level 3 ground armor, not something we see very often at this stage of the game, but he's been on top of his upgrades. He's working on those Protoss air weapons level 2. We're probably going to see what you mentioned earlier, that carrier build. Admittedly, not on 3 bases, on 5.
Yeah. No, you eventually got to get around to the capital ships being the right answer here, but something from Zest is snuffing out this drop attempt. He's just coming back. It was not revealed. It didn't go past...
I believe he got the revelation on it. That Oracle is still active.
Oh, no, if you look at the drop in the top left, I don't think so.
Well, it's going to go anyway, and I guess it's Star Sense, because here comes the interception. Oh, I mean, that's just going to get absolutely wiped out. No doubt about it. Aggressive blink forward once again into Marauders, which is, these are nasty, but no, Innovation has really been slacking on the upgrades. He is way behind in that regard. 2-1. He's working on Infantry 3 now. He's been focusing so much on ship weapons. And honestly, that's kind of the right call, because this is going to the sky sooner rather than later. DT's sent in to harass this base. Relatively vulnerable, but the army now pivoting around to deal with it. And now DT's being used to just directly attack this army here, but they're a little bit too tough, and the scan comes down, and that's been shut down as well. A little bit of economic damage finally being done as Innovation is able to get a siege position, which is quickly picked off by these Tempests.
And that's the big deal. I mean, Liberators are really strong, but they need to set up. They don't just attack, move into something, and give you results. You have to set them up.
You do.
And Zest has just made it so uncomfortable, pushing him off the ability to do that. So this base will get canceled. And Innovation's going to back up, and what does he have? He's starting to make some Vikings behind it. Actually, by some, I do mean about 11 billion.
Yeah, and he's going to need them. He's going to definitely need them. He obviously has not considered going with the battle cruisers, which, to be fair, not a terrible idea. Kinetic Overload does a lot of damage versus Massive. So BCs, sure, they could fight, especially if they have Yamato Cannon available, but they take a lot of damage from Tempests, and you've got to get into range of the damn things.
Right.
So Vikings is a good option at the moment. I'm just a bit worried that he may have to go full air to deal with this. It is getting a bit out of control now, and Zest thinks he can do some real damage, and he's right.
Zest is going to back off of this position.
Oh, and needs to get out of that's less liberation zones and more just an absolute blanket of the things. Revelation dropped once again. More Tempest fire coming in. There's not enough anti-air right now to handle this.
Not with the Templar. The Tempest themselves not the best, but
so
with that storm. Oh my god, he almost got all the Vikings there too. He's going to back off because of those liberation zones, but just temporarily. Tempests don't have the highest attack rate, but they do have range. And
they don't do a huge amount of damage to Vikings. I'm kind of surprised not to see ship plating upgraded, but the damage has been, and those Vikings are hitting hard against those armored targets.
Yep. Now, we get to an interesting point, though, where it's like, this is not a win scenario, by the way, for Innovation. He does not defend that army and win the game from there, because it's very unlikely that Zest overcommits.
No.
So he needs to find a hole. He's been trying to poke top left. You talked about the DTs kind of deterring that. He's now swinging around the right side. But look at how it's good to be lucky, isn't it? Okay, no, never mind. It's unlucky in this case. The probe goes down the right side, but here comes the army coming in.
Oh, man.
gets nothing back here, Total
Yep,
Biscuit.
this looking like a tradey kind of position because Innovation is now stimming towards the almost undefended 5th base, just a few cannons. So it looks like we're going to be seeing bases go down one way or the other. We've got some Zealots in the mix, but that Planetary Fortress hasn't fallen yet. And unless he's willing to commit the firepower of the Tempest to this cause, which he needs to deal with this air right now, that's not going to happen. A huge amount of Liberation Zones fall down, and you can see the Colossi rapidly backing off here.
Beautiful play from Innovation. I also like the Dark Templar tech, and I'm going to come back around to that in a second here, but Innovation does pick off that base, but this attack gets deflected by Innovation. All of a sudden, the Tempest now being left alone here.
Yeah, they're not going to get away, and I think Zest realizes that. There's too many Vikings and nowhere near enough stuff on the ground. I think the Liberators proved effective against the Stalkers, drawn back into a choke point there, using that storm, but there's just a little bit too much Terran, and both armies taking hideous losses here.
Hideous losses indeed. Meanwhile, Innovation did, by the way, sneak a left side base that is just there because basically Zest doesn't know it's there.
Yep.
The chaos of the game is such that it's been an issue, but all of a sudden Innovation might have overextended here a little bit. Stalkers mean that you can't really retreat.
Nope.
Those 3 Colossus, by the way, tried and true, still there.
Alive.
And they still represent a huge issue. You're going to make some anti-air, so that's going to be fine, but you need to have the Vikings spend some time at those Colossus. This army gets washed up, and Innovation is, again, in a very tough spot. He's up in supply, but what is the answer for this army? And that's the bank of Zest has been a huge kind of stay factor for me.
It has. That said, his current mining capability is not good enough for the number of bases he has. You know, that bank represents a single big warp in.
You're right.
Once that's gone, then he's really got nothing to fall back on here, which makes me think that Innovation, especially with this 5th base going back up, it may be cancelled here. Zest is sitting on this high-tech army that can really only fight in one place at a time. And I think Innovation is taking advantage of that, is starting to harry and harass and do yet more economic damage. He's forcing in these big defensive warp ins. Look, the bank just is gone now. Zealots and DTs had to be warped in to deal with what is frankly a very replaceable force there for Innovation. And unless Zest is able to get all his forces together and attack...
Yeah, no, you're right. In the supply gap has actually...
Here he goes. He's going right in here at a big storm right in the center. Quickly pulling that away. Innovation in a choke point, not where he wants to be. As we said, still a very high-tech, extremely well-upgraded Protoss army here.
And the scariest thing, look at this. It's 8 Templar with that army, by the way. Because he went so heavy in the anti-air, because he had to, basically, from the Tempest, he does not have any answer for these storms.
No, he does not.
You can count on Zest to go ahead and land those storms. But 8 Templar, he could miss like 5 and still land 4. You know, it's kind of crazy like that. But it's going to be Zest that backs off. I kind of want to limelight something here. You talked about the low probe count. That's one of the issues for Zest. But one of the big wins has been that Dark Templar tech. Like, a lot of people think of it as a base harass mechanic, and that's, of course, what he's used it for. But he's also used it defensively just to be like, hey, we're in a pseudo-low economic situation where every scan counts. I'm going to warp the DT every time you show up, and it's going to cost you.
Yeah. It's like either you scan and you can't mine, you don't get the mule, or you don't scan and you lose units. It's not a nice choice to make, and as you said, usually at this stage of the game, it wouldn't really matter so much. Say, oh, it's 5-base Terran, there's plenty of scans. Well, no, not really. You know, he needs all the money he can get. Zest has been running on seriously low economy up to this point, though. And you've got this 5th base right in here, which is barely mining. That's good for later. Zest will be able to evacuate probes there, but right now, more damage being done. Runs right into a storm. 6 storms here. But is it going to be enough? There's so much being blanketed here. It will be. So much. If there was less storm, that would have gone a very different way. It didn't. GG. What a game from Zest.
Very impressive play from Zest at every stage of this game. I think the only concern was, as you pointed out again, he didn't keep up with his pro production. Of course, the game was extremely back and forth and very aggressive, so that's one of the things that can kind of fall by the wayside. But
yeah, totally
his tech paths, his information, his revelations early on, his observer placement, all equipped him with the ability to just be one step ahead of Innovation and to dominate. And you talked about this before the match. PvT has been Zest's sweet spot, beating Maru, Beyond, some of these best players. He lost Innovation earlier, but man, in this best of one, he didn't cheese it out. He didn't get lucky. He played a very good straight up PvT and was able to beat Innovation. Very impressive play.
Yeah, and it really was straight up as well. It was a really great back and forth macro game between the two. Innovation looked like he was in a position to maybe win it out, but I think honestly, the diligence of the upgrades of Zest may very well have won the day there. How often do you see Protoss at that stage of the game have 3-3-3 and 3 on air weapons as well? That is incredible diligence for upgrades.
Yes, it's one thing to have the correct tech path, but as you said, to keep yourself at an advantage in upgrades is a very big deal as well. And I know we could talk about this forever, but
and we will have to as we set up the next game. I think it's just exciting. That's so good. StarCraft so far, and only a couple of maps in.
Yeah, I love that how he got to each tech path was also earned. He switches to Stargate after he kills the scout to kind of throw him off. He goes Colossus to shore up the differences of the Stargate tech against a high macro Terran. And then he affords the double forge because of the Colossus tech. And then, as you said, even switching to Tempest for the Liberators, but upgrading the Tempest. That's something a lot of people fall by the wayside. They're like, no, I just need Tempest. Maybe eventually I'll go Colossus or Carrier. And when I get around to Carrier, it's at that time that I'll all of a sudden start upgrading. No. Zest was already ahead of it. It's just beautiful play, up and down.
It really was. And here's an interesting thing. Something that Innovation did completely lack that may very well have turned that around. And I do wonder if Inno even realizes how much Templar was dealing with. Where were the ghosts?
Yeah.
No ghosts.
I mean, but that's the pressure. That's like the indirect pressure that was placed on him. He was making 5 Vikings at a time, totally, because by the time he sees Colossus, he goes, okay, well, I'm not going to make Vikings now. I'm going to double down on Liberators. He starts going for Liberator range, and it's at that time that he's already realizing he's facing Tempest, which is kind of ahead of the curve. A lot of Protoss make them more reactively as opposed to ahead of time like that. And then he's just like, well, now I need Vikings for those Tempests, otherwise I just die to these pushes. And he had no time for the Ghosts. I mean, could he have squeezed them in there? In hindsight, we'd probably say he should have. Especially if he's like, hey, if like something like Genie shows up on his shoulders, like, you're going to be facing 8 Templar in the final battle, he'd be like, oh shit, well I better have Ghost. If you don't have Ghost, you're just dead.
Pretty much. It's a rough one, no doubt. But as we said, all kings can fall in this tournament. Doesn't matter how good you are. Let's see what Zest can do, because his next challenge is going to be a very interesting one indeed. I've been looking forward to seeing this guy play in our event for a long time in Control. We've been chasing him for quite some time. He's mostly just been unavailable with just clashes with various things, because this guy has been putting on some incredible performances lately, and if you have been paying attention to the Scandinavian player, now is the time to. It's Finland's finest. We have Serral.
Serral is the hype baby of the European scene, not quite getting there yet with that big win, but of course featuring the talent and ability to do that. And one of my favorite things for you guys to kind of keep your eye on is Serral is one of the most diligent Ling harassers there are. He will constantly get information by trying for run-bys, by trying to see when your third's going down, your fourth. They will all be harried. They will all be witnessed. And I think that's a big part of the reason why he's such a strong force in that European scene right now.
Yeah, I think so. He went unknown for quite some time, unless he happened to be in Finland, in which case you knew this guy was the top dog. But lately, it was his results in WCS Yon Shopping's European qualifiers, and Valencia's European qualifiers, by the way. He won both against the same player, 3-0 against the Laser in his EVZ. Very impressive. And last year, he got a little bit of a win outside of his home country. He's been winning things like Battle of Scandinavia forever, but he won Takes Penthouse Party against Hero Marine, and then he puts his foot down in a serious way this year at WCS Yon Shopping. He comes in second, narrowly losing to Neeb, and I do mean narrowly. It was 3-4.
It's a great series.
It was an incredible series. If you have missed it, if you haven't seen that one, all the VODs are available on YouTube. I strongly recommend Neeb versus Serral. Incredible back-and-forth gameplay. Hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that, because we do have Serral against the top Protoss here as well. So here we are on Abyssal Reef. To the northwest position, in the red trunks, playing Zerg. From Finland, it's Serral. Versus his opponent, Killer of Machines, John Connor of our tournament. In the blue trunks, playing Protoss, the reigning king of the hill, it's Zest.
And all kings must die, as you said.
Indeed, they must fall.
I was fully prepared for a day of innovation. Just very, when you said he was coming out first, I was like, all right, then, GG Shoutcraft. But nope, as is tradition, It doesn't matter how good you are. He topples Bunny, playing really fantastically well. And he played good against Zest too, by the way. It's not like we look at that match and say,
Zest just played better.
Happened, Ovation? He played great.
Yep. A lot of underestimation heading in the direction of those that face innovation. Dropping some pretty sick bars right here. I don't know if you noticed, by the way. And when it comes to Zest, it's very easy to write him off as a has-been, you know, because his tournament life sort of, it went into a spiral for a year, which this is the curse of greatness when it comes to StarCraft players, right? Especially those that win 2 major world tournaments back-to-back. They are immediately targeted. They're the most researched players in the world. They're under incredible pressure. Or maybe they ease off a bit. You know, they walk away with $100,000. Suddenly they're not so worried about winning money for food anymore. And then they start to lose.
It's as you said, it's been the curse of success in StarCraft is just that it's such a hard level to maintain. We had a few times the term Bonjwa came up in Brood War, where some players were able to do it for months on end, just be the top players. I Love Uv, Nada, Boxer, some of these guys were absolutely at the best of the scene for a while. And StarCraft 2 seems to be a harder thing to strike a balance with.
Yeah, it seems so. As to why that actually is, we don't really know. Maybe it's the regularity of patching around when Brood War was big in South Korea, of course. Blizzard wasn't really patching and balancing the game. Balancing was kind of happening through maps, so if you saw a long streak of dominance for a certain race or a certain player, then maybe the tournaments would start to change the maps around to try and alter that. But there was a surprising amount of, I guess you can call it, manipulation going on. The tournaments had ultimate control over the balance of the game.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point, Total Biscuit. I think it is interesting looking at the 2 different scenes where Brood War, you know, the game itself wasn't balanced at all. It was all through maps.
Yeah.
And it was actually, it's kind of a well-known, it's well-known-ish for the hardcore scene. I think for people that are more casual fans, they're not as well-known. But the maps have features that were very much so switched around to favor Protoss, or Zerg, or Terran at very different times. But just some players even rose above that despite it. Now, in this game, we had a very important thing happen here, by the way. Serral was able to get those lings in again and see the Twilight Council. Now, the Twilight Council by itself doesn't mean much, but for players at this level, it means a lot. So Serral's able to scout that and say, okay, I'm probably facing the common meta build, which is DT drop. Now, as I say that, that is exactly what he is facing, but he so far has no detection. So he's getting the lair now, but this is also that weird tightrope that top players walk where they're like, I will get the Spore Crawlers a few moments before I need them. No time before that because I need to just squeeze out every ounce of value out of my build.
Yeah. And there's always the risk of overcommitting to a defense, which allows another player to get ahead. You know, that's how thin the margins are at pro StarCraft level. You might think, well, let's just build a few Spore Crawlers. Yeah, but what if you build one too many? And what if the opponent doesn't actually commit as much as you think? Oh, you're behind now. No, it's not necessarily the mistake that you can make. That's the kind of thing you can do on ladder against an unknown opponent at a lower level, and that's the safe thing to do. But at pro level, safety isn't necessarily the priority.
No, I mean, and as you said, over safety can actually be death.
Yeah, totally.
It's just the tedious place they exist in. He's gonna go rogue.
Active scouting by Serral there.
Yeah, he sees the slower third, and that pretty much confirms everything that he knows about this build. The DT show up here. One of the queens could have gone down, but it backs away. Losing a Roach Third, not the biggest of deals. They're very disposable. Now, on the flip side for Zest, it's not like this is a true DT drop where it's like, this is an all-in, I need it to work really bad. This is the first stage of a harass. He's going to go with the Archons behind that.
Yep.
What I like about the tech path for Serral is the Roaches, of course, can eventually be the counterattack tool, but when you're facing against Roaches, if you just have a bunch of Lings, Archons, good luck. But with Roaches, you can deflect them. You can weather them down and survive.
Yeah, particularly if you maybe make a Ravager or two, you're constantly putting the Prism at threats, you're getting something that can drop on top of Archons and do a little bit of splash damage, and they're pretty big units, pretty fat. They can take those hits quite easily. Serral currently deflecting quite nicely, but still, you know, 3 workers killed, 4 workers killed, because in the meantime he did do just that little adept run by, and oh, they are paying for themselves so well. Serral having to defend with drones. Oh, Lord, a big shot. 11 workers down to that Archon drop. That's some serious damage done already.
Yep. And the Warp Prism not taking a lot of damage, by the way. Sometimes if you have 4 or 5 queens, they can show up and make it, drop down to very low health, so the harass just cannot proceed just out of risk of losing everything. But because he's only had kind of one queen piddling and paddling away at it, it's just like, nope, I guess I'll keep going with this. And as you said, the harass wasn't super great, but then he gets that one shot that kills, I think, 7 drones on top of the few that died on the left side. And now it's very good. Very good harass.
They're sort of pulling Serral's multitasking apart a little bit there, finding a weakness, being able to exploit it. And it's interesting to see Serral's style is very queen low. We've seen a lot of Zerg just go for just more queens because, hey, they're good against everything, right? You know, you can deflect drops with them, you can defend against harass, you can spread a lot of creep with them, you can do all sorts of things. Serral actually only playing a 4-queen style on 4 bases, which is about as cheap as you can get, really.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Zest is pushing out here, and we have the Baneling Nest finishing, we have Ravagers, Roaches. I do believe Serral is on top of this, that active scouting being so good, the Overseer kind of on the right side of the map picking off and showing up and seeing what he's facing. And Zest is going for a bit of an off timing here. No 4th behind this. He just wants to try and cancel the 4th of our Zerg player. Seeing all the Ravagers, be careful though.
Oh, I mean, this is dicey, no doubt. And he takes some big hits in the middle there. Excellent shots with the Ravagers, and this was a mistake. Zest overcommitted there, but he could still get the base. But he lost a lot to do it, more so than he really should have.
He lost kind of the buffer units. It's just a lot of the time. There's a bunch of Zealots that get warped in here, but killing this 4th, as you said, would still kind of make it worth it, as long as he doesn't lose the tech.
Yeah.
He cannot fight on creep. He's going to back up here, picks up the Archon, nice hot pickup. The Banelings waddling after. They are off that creep, but it looks like it's a full route so far.
Yeah, it is. That's going to be some expensive stuff that goes down the process as well. He's got to evacuate that. Mortally knows he does. The Archon's at the back. That's a good way to fight, but those shields are going down. There's only a single Warp Prism. He's saving what he can, but that's actually not a lot, and Serral really overwhelmed him there, dealing a ton of damage to some very expensive units while not losing an awful lot himself.
Not losing an awful lot himself and kind of showing his hand. It's going to be Roach, Ling, Ravager, Baneling. Obviously, emphasis on Banelings and Ravager. And if there was a 4th base set up for Zest behind this, I would hugely favor him. As it is, it's a bit of a draw, if not slightly in favor of Zest, because he's able to fall back. He can now add Storm or Archons, that kind of thing, and just keep pumping out the Immortals. I will say, though, it is just the one Robo, which is going to be a little bit problematic. The Immortal count's not going to be mega high. He's not going Storm, so if he's going to rely on a bunch of Zealots, look for those Banelings to really connect and shift the favor over to Zerg player Serral.
Yeah, and Centrifugal Hooks is about to kick in. We're also looking at the level 2 melee. He's committing very much to the style right now. Yeah. Really going in on it. But he is also getting the muscular augments. You know, Baneling, Hydra, Ravager, quite a popular composition at the moment. You might think, okay, there's a little bit of clash there in terms of upgrades. That's actually fine. Hydra DPS is just good in general. For a long time, you know. Oh, my.
It's a bit interesting of a choice. It had some little light harass of the natural. It didn't do much, but the Warp Prism itself as a counterattack is so strong.
Yep.
I think he just wants the Archons here. He wants to reinforce. I think Zest is just choosing muscle over finesse, which is something that, you know, he does in mind, body, and spirit sometimes. And now the army of Serral doesn't look as fearsome as it did before. Zest shows up with 4 Archons. Well,
Shuts a bunch of Banelings down there, but Serral's going to go for it anyway. There's still a lot of Ravagers. I think we can't really discount that, especially since those force fields are essentially nullified by them. But it took a little bit of time for that bile to drop, so he's able to retreat, get off creep for the time being. That's still it's an expensive and fragile army right here, and I'm worried about it getting surrounded and crushed.
Yeah, and he's going to be fighting off creep here. The surround, as you talked about, is a very real possibility. But I think Serral's doing a good job so far of not overcommitting. That's something that a lot of players in particular are want to do. They'll be like, well, I've got a big army. I'm almost maxed out. Let's just go. But he's waiting. He's going to add more Banelings. The Banelings are huge here because it is still a Zealot core army for our Protoss players. It's not like we're talking about 35 Archons. And it looks like Zest thinks it's time to go.
Just sort of shoving him back there, I think. I wouldn't want to have gone into that in a million years.
Oh.
There's a lot of damage there. The army looks a lot smaller than it really is, by the way. There are actually pockets of the Protoss army spread out into flanking positions. So he's trying to set it up, and a sandwich coming in here from the Zerg player. The reinforcements need to come in for the Protoss, and they're not here. He's driving himself back to defensive positions, and in come the Zealots, but kind of the wrong time, because they run right into the Banelings. Now, here we go. It's an Archon sandwich, but is there enough Protoss? He's coming from all sides in control, and that actually was a beautiful maneuver.
I loved it. The Archon's able to stomp forward there, and again, it's the multi-prong attack, as you pointed out, that makes this a fight favorable for Zest. Serral's going to back up, very wise. As you said, it's an expensive army. Should he have lost that army, there's no way Serral bounces back from that. With that War Prism joined up with the army, it's just reinforcing. Now it's time to see if it's somehow Zest that overcommits. The Link's going to go for a surround here. Baneling's connecting everywhere, but is it enough? It doesn't look like enough. Zerg's going to back up here.
They're connected with the tough units. More Banelings moving in right now into a time warp. And, the absolutely incredible micro here with the Archons evacuating most of them. There's comes some detonations. But again, you're hitting very tough units with Banelings. That is not doing the job.
Right. Zest wants you to Baneling against his immortal.
Absolutely. Burn it. Burn it against my barriers. Burn it against my Archons. It doesn't matter. And then I can bring my Zealot Warp in to back it up. And that's doing the trick. But right now, look at this. It's thinned out. He needs to get out of there right now. He may have overcommitted, and that's going to cost him. Immortals are not cheap in control.
No, they're not cheap. They're the huge, the muscle of this army, the ability to stay.
Oh, nasty surround by Serral.
It's surround there. This War Prism, the only reason he's still in the game. Zest's going to try to back up. Oh, did the Hydras get in range? No, they did not. One Immortal's like, is there room in there for one more? No, there's... Oh, he actually swaps it out.
God, the DTs come in and kill the Banelings, but die themselves in the process, and a huge attack with the Banelings wipes out the mineral line. Suddenly, Zest is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he's in huge trouble. These bases for the Zerg behind this, not defended. I'm looking for detection, DT harass. And Serral's thinking the same thing. He makes some overseers at that exact moment because he's like, you know what? I feel like I'm way ahead. What's one of the only ways I can lose from here? Oh, that's right. DT's showing up and shutting down bases. So he's closing that door as well. Serral thinking on the fly. And he's morphing in 25 Banelings, which is, of course, we know from Artosis. That's a lot of Banelings total business.
Good amount of Banelings. Good amount. And ultimately, notice what hasn't been happening because of how defensive Zest has had to be. No harass. You know, that War Prism has been used as an evacuation and defensive tool. And that means almost infinite money for the Zerg player, and they could throw unit after unit after unit at you, and those are excellent force fields, and weirdly enough, all the Ravagers died, so that was almost a perfect defense here from Zest. And a couple more of those, and he can get back into it, but you know, the economy took a real bruising. There's no doubt about it. Zest is on the back foot here.
He almost lost his 5th Nexus behind this. Zest doing everything he can to fight up here. He's got 59 workers, so he's not, you know, despite all the harass and aggression on his half, still in the game.
Yep.
Supply-wise, he's only down by 30. He did try some harass on the left side. I don't know if I saw what
done. He was forced out. He's going in again, so he's doing a little bit of damage with this as well. He's got the charge Lutz coming in. This base may very well be forfeit. Splitting off a couple of links to make that happen would be a good idea, I think. Serral really would like to take that out, and he does get it, and there's no way that Zest can overcommit to defending that. He's got that nice choke point. He wants to hold it right now. He knows that if he loses this army, there's no replacing it. But look at that. There's a lot of Archons coming in. It's starting to get to the point where this army could very easily fight what Serral has. And Serral's realized that. He's finally working on tech.
I want to see another reaction from Serral, because right now, you pointed this out, it's basically just the force fields that are keeping Zest alive. We didn't see them earlier because Ravagers, of course, have the ability to stomp through them. But all of a sudden, Serral's gone full Ling, Hydra, Baneling.
Yeah.
And Zest is like, okay, look, I'm Protoss. If I can sit on 4 bases, maybe squeak out a 5th, and really get my army up to snuff here, I can snowball from this point. I don't care how far behind I was. I can live to that point and do it. Serral is desperate to try and find a hole here, but so far Zest has been at every turn.
He's now taking up to Hive, which probably should have done a little bit earlier, because bear in mind, the key unit in this composition against everything here is that Sentry. Without a Ravager to break it, the Sentry's Guardian Shield is very effective against those poorly upgraded Hydras. The Banelings can't get through, and of course, those Zerglings have equal problems. Combine those with Archons, and you have an almost impenetrable defensive line. And we're going to see that line in action right now. The Banelings do break through, but they don't kill anything. That was just a huge amount of money that just evaporated into thin air.
A ton. 38 Zerglings behind it to finish off the max. He's going to go at it
again. And he crashes in, and that may be enough to overwhelm it. The sentries do finally get taken out.
Yeah, they found their way to the soft underbelly. Zest tried to do what he could, but he just missed the holes in the field and lost the units that could have closed it up. He might be able to push this back, but I feel like that was the mortal wound.
That might be it. That might be it. He took way too much damage. The Archons, not enough. GG. Serral, our wunderkind from Finland, overwhelms Zest, and this is quite the bloody showdown we have.
It's just going back and forth, right? But
yeah,
you got to be excited about that because, again, we've been talking about the level play from Serral, and it started with the early active Ling scouting and spotting the right response to a common meta build with that DT into Archon drop, followed by the smothering. I mean, a lot of players would have overcommitted. You pointed this out a couple times, Total Biscuit. He takes one bad fight off creep, loses that base of Roaches and Ravagers, and that's it. There's no real coming back from that. He makes like Lings and Banelings behind that and probably just dies. But he just never overcommitted and eventually got to a place where even when he was getting force fielded off and you and I were kind of calling for Ravage or something like that, he's like, nope, I'll take a 6th base, I'll tech to Hive, and eventually Zest will just get outspent or make a mistake. And that's what happened. Serral was able to jump in there with those Banelings, get on top of the sentries, and the rest is history.
Yep, it really is just that. And this is the level of play you're currently seeing, folks. If you're new to Kings, you might be thinking, oh, well, these guys are just losing. Well, these are all world-class champion-level players. All of them. They are that good, and they can beat anybody on any given day. And what's impressive is to see one of these players be able to beat multiple opponents, which does happen and probably will. So far, though, it's been, I'll take my $500 and then I'll abdicate. I'll take my $500, then I'll abdicate. It's almost been almost like an agreement between the players, just to take the 500 and then die.
Everybody wins so at least one or something. But to your point, as long as the level of play is at this level, we get, I don't know, we get more player diversity, which I really like. I've enjoyed the cool streaks because it builds momentum and you're getting more and more excited. It's like, oh my God, can you make it 5? Can you make it 6? Holy cow, he made it to 7. That has its own fun and excitement. But I enjoy seeing like Serral dominate, well, not even dominate, but play really well against Zest there and beat him. Zest just got done looking amazing against Innovation. Innovation looks amazing versus Bunny. So, of course, the natural question is, who are we going to bring in and make look amazing against Serral now? Because that seems to be the streak here.
I'm intrigued.
We're testing some stuff here.
We are, yes. We're just testing a couple of... We had a bit of a lobby issue, so we're currently fixing that. Of course, some of these games are played cross-server by necessity because you want to see foreigners versus Koreans. Well, in some cases, that does mean they have to play in a less optimal environment, which is fine. That's...
Yep.
A lot of blame is put on that, but as a pro gamer, as I've said time and time again, especially in 2017 with so many online events, you need to be prepared for the possibility that you will not be in an optimal ping environment. You've got to adapt your strategy accordingly. If you have a very micro-heavy ping-focused strategy, you might not want to execute that if you happen to be playing cross-server. And most of the time, we'll always pick a server that's fair for both players. Yeah. In that case, we had Serral versus Zest, and we were playing on NA, where they both had equal ping, so...
Nope. I mean, it's year 7 going on 8 of StarCraft 2. We've dealt with this world of that's what you have to deal with, and all the fixings and the most fair servers are being played, which of course still results in one player being favored over the other. But that is the way we live here, and what I've liked is because there was a time where that was the dominant discussion around this, like, oh, I beat such and such Korean. They're like, yeah, but you beat him on your home server, so it's not that big of a deal. That discussion's not really around anymore.
I don't think so.
Cool. No. I mean, like what I saw from Zest, did he miss a couple of force fields? Sure. Can we completely blame it on server? I could, but I don't think that that was the biggest factor.
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, we saw plenty of perfect force fields. A bigger factor would be the fact that there weren't any Ravagers to break him, right?
Right. Well, I mean, he was able to save, like, the Warp Prism evacuation technique he did. That's high micro that you can't pull off if you're dealing with, like, 250 ping or something like that. He was able to do that. So, anyways, I think we're fine. And keep in mind, Serral played on the, American server as well, which is not perfect for him either. So that is and that's why it ends up being fair, is you end up playing a match where it's like, okay, well, I'm in a place where, sure, it's slightly better for me or him, but the next game it'll shift in favor of my opponent. It goes back and forth. It's all fair.
All is fair in love and StarCraft, ladies and gentlemen. The king is dead once again, and Serral, our Finnish monarch, takes the throne for the time being. Only 19 years old. Like, this guy's got a long career ahead of him, as far as I'm concerned. Currently, he's number 3 on the WCS Circus. I guess you could call it the WCS Circus. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Cancel the 3-ring circus. Secure all animals in the zoo. Serral is currently at 4,000 WCS points. Like, you think about where he's got those points as well. He won a ton of points from Austin. Yon Shopping, Valencia. He won a ton of points from ESL. In fact, he won the most points from ESL at the recent World Championship. He is winning in every major event right now, and he's picking up points. And that is a big deal, because that's the amount of consistency you don't see all that often in StarCraft. Especially not in the foreign scene.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a very special player coming up next. Very special player indeed. StarCraft has plenty of retirees. Of course, you might be aware in South Korea there is mandatory military service, which means that sometimes our favorite players have to go off and serve their country. But sometimes they complete that and decide to come back to us. In this case, that's what happened. We have Squirtle for the first time in a competitive tournament in over 2 years. Squirtle returns.
And that's incredible. Squirtle, one of the... You know, we talk about some of these players that had impacts on the meta. They shaped the scene around them, and that's kind of a special quality. Squirtle had that. Squirtle was one of the innovators of the Colossus push in Heart of the Swarm era StarCraft 2, in the PvT matchup in particular. Of course, he was successful across the board in all 3 matchups, but that was where he was really felt, was the honing and mastering of that style of play. And he's also just one of the fun, awesome, historic players, as you talked about. Various things dragged these StarCraft 2 guys away from the game for a while, but to come back, I am excited and thrilled to see how he's playing and how he's doing, because he's a special talent who's been missing for a while, by the way. It's not like he retired 4 months ago and we're being weird. He's been gone for a very long time.
We're talking really full-on military service, which is a 2-year, just over 2-year period in South Korea. So he retired in 2014. That's the context of it. The last tournament that he won was actually all the way back, if we're looking at majors anyway, he won the Daily Motion Cup in 2013, just right at the end of the year, in December. 4-0 against San, of all people. Incredible. And his biggest placement was second place at WCS's South Korea Nationals, and won a bunch of money there. But of course, his most famous series, as most people will remember it. If you haven't, well, this is something to go and watch after the show. 2012 GSL Season 2.
Yeah.
3-4 against MVP in some of the most legendary games we've ever seen.
Man. That was the one where Battlecruiser showed up, right? And then Tasis freaked out.
I believe so. I think there was a Archon toilet possibly involved in that. When that happened, when that was a thing, I'm kind of thank God that it's not now.
Not me. Bring back the toilet, man.
All right.
Back.
Now, bear in mind, Squirtle has been streaming lately. So we are aware he is playing up to a good level. His MMR is starting to rise quite quickly in South Korea. But Rust is a big deal. This guy has been gone 4 years. Has he played StarCraft while in the military? Probably. A lot of players do on a very casual basis. For instance, Supernova is currently he's towards the end of his military deployment, but he was streaming last weekend.
Okay.
So we can maybe expect to see him come back in the not-too-distant future. Of course, he wasn't playing against pro-level players, but he is playing, and you don't forget everything.
No.
Mechanically, that's the kind of thing, you need to be concerned about your ability to keep up, especially if you're older. And if you kept up with the meta. But in terms of strategy, in terms of your thinking mind, that never really goes away.
No, the core is always going to be there. The big thing is, like, Squirtle comes from Heart of the Swarm, and he's entering into Legacy of the Void. So there is going to be some pickup, but like you said, he's been playing, so
he has been playing.
This isn't some crazy gimmick game. He's here to play.
No, we're not just bringing out a retiree to get whomped by Serral. But, of course, we have seen Serral's play against Zerg, against Protoss, in fact. So Squirtle, there's no doubt he's got it cut out for him. And here he is, to the southeast position, currently playing under the name of Positive, in the Blue Trunks, playing Protoss. It is the one and only, returning from over 2 years of military service, it's Squirtle. God, a blast from the past, ladies and gentlemen, a blast from the past. We hope to see more of that in this tournament. Hope to see more of our favorite players coming back. To the northwest position, the current reigning king of the hill. When Squirtle was playing, this guy was 16 years old. In the Red Trunks, playing Zerg, he is Serral.
You don't need to remind me, man. Whenever I commentate a WCS event, I'll tell you it's so funny, because it's like, Wow, Mana, he's been around forever. How old is he? 23? Oh my god. Okay. So these guys are all young people playing at an extremely high level since a very young age. Even the Koreans are starting to look old, actually. Like, I don't have Squirtle's age in front of me, but we had Zest at GSL versus the World. It's like, how old is he? Oh, he's ancient. He's like 33 or 4 or something like that. It's like, yeah.
I guess. I think, well, does that matter? Well, it does. The speed that you need to play StarCraft at is ridiculous. Is it as maybe mechanically demanding as something like Brood War is? Well, no. But that's like saying, well, you know, it's not quite as demanding to drive a... I'm going to make a car analogy. Considering I don't drive, it's going to sound really dumb. Well, you know, it's not as demanding to drive a Lamborghini around a course than it is a Formula 1 vehicle. It's like, yeah, they're both pretty damn demanding, though, right? Like, they are two of the hardest games in the world, and as much as we're seeing the resurgence of Brood War, especially in South Korea with StarCraft Remastered, and a lot of circle jerking surrounding which is the better game, they're both incredibly demanding, incredibly high-level 1 versus 1 games.
If you're playing StarCraft, be it Brood War or StarCraft 2 or some other mixture that I'm forgetting here, you're playing one of, if not the hardest games to be at the top level on planet Earth, as far as I'm concerned. And that's not... I think what I like about it, too, is that's not even biased. People don't listen to that and go, what? Guitar Hero 4 in the early 2000s was, of course... It's like, no, there's other hard games. I'm not saying that. I'm not even hating on other games. It's just a very simple, safe statement to tell you that these top-level StarCraft players are some of the most talented, and they're playing one of the most demanding games ever in the history of gaming.
Now they are. You know, it's really only fighting games that can match up to the intensity in 1 versus 1 competitive gaming, I think, right now. And we're seeing the best StarCraft that's ever been played. No doubt about it.
It's just a good time to be alive. I mean, to your point, Quake is kind of coming back. That would be really fun to see. I miss Arena FPS. That'd be really fun. There's just so many good games. And like you said, Brood War, I mean, with Remastered coming out Monday, for Pete's sakes, I am the negative Nancy. I have a feeling that, well, I want to be proven wrong. I want there to be a foreigner Brood War scene, I guess is what I'm saying. I want there to be tournaments, and I'd love it if it didn't just reinvigorate Korea on Brood War, but had a weird, you know, effect on everything else as well, and we had Brood War alongside StarCraft 2. That's an amazing world. I would love it.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if that happens, but you have to bear in mind, and you know this more than most because you played it at that level, how mechanically demanding Brood War is, and in 2017, how many people are really willing to commit to that? Is there even the money in it to do it? In South Korea, probably. You know, it's still a big game there, and rightfully so. But outside, maybe not so much.
You're exactly right. That's going to be, to me, the challenge. Does the Oracle...
He's getting out, yeah, but Serral actually going with a more queen-heavy approach than what we saw from him last time. You noticed the amount of damage early on he took from not having those queens, and Zest took full advantage of that. This time around, Serral says, you're not going to trick me that way again.
And he's starting to add more here, and he's actually mixing it up, which is one of the discussions you and I have every month when we do this, and it's the subtle strategy of like, yeah, you won and you played really well, but you got to mix it up because that other guy was watching you. Squirtle watched Zest versus Serral and knows what to expect, but Serral's going to go with the faster Baneling Nest here, the faster +1 melee, a little bit more Ling heavy. This affords him a faster 4th as well. Does he go for drops and stuff? Well, he's going to need a lair to do that, so we're seeing the lair getting morphed in here. But this map... and Speed Overlords, by the way, worth mentioning. So he's going to be able to scout pretty strong here as well.
Yep, and we just have a nice little auto-patrolling Phoenix here, just got to plink away, and it's not really quite on top of it. Squirtle just choosing not to manually control it. You could get more efficiency out of it, but does he really care? I mean, is there anything to see? Not really. You know, he's going to see 2 gateways, and that's about it. He already knew the Stargate was there, and in come the Lings, we actually have attacks from both sides here. The Oracle doesn't really get anything done. Lings don't get anything done either. Big defensive warp in here, so the 3rd looking pretty secure. Army size, I mean, Serral's army is tiny. The Protoss army more than enough to handle anything that's coming his way right now.
He's getting away with murder with workers. He's just powering out. There's the Hydra Den. He's doing this off the back of a 15, 16, well, no, 20 plus Zerglings actually. He's going for a drop in the main.
Here's the drop, yeah. I like that.
Nice. There's enough infrastructure. Well, actually, no. There's only the 3 gateways. I was about to say that.
Don't know how much damage is going to get done.
Gateways, but for right now, just 3.
Yep, and unfortunately, Squirtle doesn't quite see that. There we go, now he's on top of it. The Ling's on the way, they got Revelationed, and the drop overload will be shut down, but of course, there are now Lings in the base, and there was no real defense for that, so this is going to be lost mining time. This is going to be lost miners. Here come the Zealots, warped in to defend. It's going to go straight down to the Natural, which does not have an awful lot of defense. The Militia Corps being brought back in, and, you know, we might be seeing a little bit of that rust here from Squirtle. He's having to adapt to the Legacy of the Void style. It's not the same as Heart of the Swarm by any stretch.
The level of play is higher. That's also worth just mentioning. Like, not to take us too far off topic, but, you know, StarCraft 2 scene's been around a long time, so we've seen the departure and coming and goings of players. But one thing that's been constant is the skill level is still climbing. Whoever stayed in the scene has only gotten better.
Yeah.
The game, by the way, everyone agrees, is in its best state in terms of level of play, too. Like, there's not...
War Prism just completely shot down. Cyril with 5 Hydras in position for that. Interesting choice here. We've gone with Charge Storm here.
Yeah.
A little bit old school. Interested to see that. Squirtle Storms were pretty legendary back in the day. It's very well possibly a good choice on his part. If he can land them, that's a big deal, especially against this current Zerg style. You know, it's a very squishy style. It's a very stormable style.
Well, it's interesting, too. He's got 4 sentries that have not been doing a lot of hallucinating, so they have a lot of energy as well. In this map, Ascension Ire gets kind of rampy, so if he can do the right combo of grab some units and storm the ever-living crap out of them, that's pretty great. My concern here with that Zealot-heavy composition, Banelings, Total Biscuit, if they get in on top of that, the army just kind of disappears. You need
it does. Yep, you need to make sure that you have either a buffer or those force fields in place. Cyril without Ravagers is very vulnerable to force fields.
Yeah.
Cyril is setting up a bit of a flank. He's sort of baiting the army out a little bit here.
And he gets to the top of the ramp, so all of a sudden it becomes a straight-up fight no matter what.
Yep, he's going to have to get into that choke.
Warping in on the slow pylon, by the way, so there is that rust indicating right there.
You used to be able to do that quite easily, not so much anymore. And here we go, and the force fields are not quite there yet. There's the storm. But there is still a big connection right into the center. Most of the Templar just got wiped out in that, and that's devastating. I think that's going to be it. Cyril capitalizing on a mistake right there. A little bit of rust here for Squirtle. And Cyril is top tier, demonstrating it here quite easily. GG.
Yeah.
Puts him down.
Cyril says, he says, thank you to the War Chest. Thank you to Squirtle for coming back. Welcome to the new hell.
Welcome back.
We're facing, and that's just some finished Zerg. That's what Squirrel's gonna be like. Who was that? Was that Jaedong's offspring? It's like, no, that was just some top level European Zerg that is doing the meta right now. Nothing flashy, nothing super mega fancy, just good execution, right composition, and it makes it hard for Protoss. If you're not at the top of that ramp doing exactly what you have to do to hold that off, you're man fighting that army, and the Protoss army needs Archons, it needs Immortals to stand up to that. Without those things, you're dead.
Yep. Well, we'll see a lot more Squirtle in the future, ultimately. It was cool to see him back. Wanted to just give him a quick opportunity, and, well, welcome back. You know, a bit of a harsh welcome, but he's used to that. You know, he's a pro gamer. He's going to take that, and he's going to learn from it, and he's going to build and shake off some of that rust, and we'll no doubt see him again in a future event. But
see a better one in months to come is what I'm excited about.
Yeah, you don't take that talent and just throw it away. You know, you can polish that up. You can polish that quite easily. But mechanically, and maybe in terms of the meta, just a little bit behind there. And Cyril is on the cutting edge of that. You know, one of the best foreign players in the world right now. One of the best Zerg in the world right now. Very cool.
Yep.
Cyril sitting on $1,000 right now. We see a streak has begun. Will he be able to maintain it? Because, of course, we just got through one group. There's 4 more groups. 4 more groups of players. 16 more players.
It's a long day of great StarCraft.
We only just got started. It's been some great games up to this point. We're going to take a quick break in the meantime, though. And we're going to tell you a little bit about the War Chest, which is what has resulted in this tournament getting as big as it has. That's the funding from Blizzard. We've always been sponsored by Blizzard, but they have kindly elected to use the War Chest to increase our prize pool and also to create some new Shoutcraft events that have been unannounced up to this point. Maybe or maybe not. I tease you with that later on. Maybe. We'll see. In the meantime, though, we'll find out a little bit about the War Chest and we'll take a break, give everyone a chance to chill. Seen some great games so far. There are plenty more coming up here on Shoutcraft Kings. Don't go anywhere. We will be back in a few minutes.
Introducing the StarCraft II War Chest. War Chest is an exciting new way to engage with StarCraft II that will give you early access to in-game items for all 3 races at a remarkably low cost, while simultaneously supporting the StarCraft II esports scene. The rewards include dozens of items like skins, decals, sprays, portraits, and emoticons. Here's how it works. War Chest is divided into 3 progression paths, 1 for each race. You can purchase access to each path separately or as a bundle. It's completely up to you. Regardless of your choice, owning a War Chest immediately grants you rewards in StarCraft II and across other Blizzard titles. Next, simply playing games in StarCraft II, both multiplayer and co-op, will grant experience to unlock more rewards inside each War Chest phase. Over the next 3 months, additional phases will open up, heralded by new issues of StarCraft II Shadow Wars, a comic covering the years after the Nova Covert Ops storyline. Each phase will allow you to continue to progress your war chest and unlock additional rewards until the event concludes with the StarCraft II World Championships at BlizzCon. 25% of all war chest purchases go directly to StarCraft II esports. The first $200,000 will be added to the $500,000 BlizzCon 2017 prize pool, and any additional contributions beyond that will be invested into operational support for the 2017-2018 seasons. Experience gained for your war chest is mirrored across all races, whether you've chosen to unlock them or not. Should you choose to focus on a single race out of the gate and change your mind later to unlock the rest, you will immediately gain retroactive access to the rewards relevant to your progress. There's a lot more to say about War Chest, and you may have additional questions, so don't hesitate to check out the blog over on the StarCraft II website for more details, or reach out to us with your questions on social media. We couldn't be more excited about what the War Chest is bringing to StarCraft II, but let us know what you think and which unlock path you've got your eye on. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in game.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Shoutcraft Kings August $10,000 edition right here. Big money. And Serral at the moment, the reigning king of the hill, sitting on $1,000 for some relatively hard work, you have to say, especially in that first map against Zest.
Yes. Streaking together 2 big wins there and looking good doing it. It's been nice to watch, I would say. The impending doom is unfortunately just over the horizon for him. I just don't know if it's this one or the one after, but it's coming.
Indeed. There are threats abound. Threats aplenty. There is no safety in this event. And heck, if you could stay on the throne for a good amount of time, well, that's a huge amount of money. I mean, think about it for a second. You know, think about what Serral has won lately and what he had to do in order to make that happen. You know, he came in second in WCS Yon Shopping. That is a big deal. That gives him $10,000. But think about this. He's already won $1,000 for 2 maps. And the amount of work he had to go through to get 10 grand on the huge stage right there, he could walk away with most of that today, just sitting in his underwear at home. There's an image for you.
Yeah, but sitting in his underwear at home, beating Zest, and you know, I think the Squirtle series ended up being, well, not series, but game. Let's call it like it is. Squirtle's got some time to go here. He made some mistakes.
He does.
The composition and the execution of said composition was lacking a little bit, but that's kind of what Shoutcraft Kings does as well. I remember we had a couple of Stefano matches and stuff like that. And that was actually when Stefano wasn't even as active as he is now. But it's still so fun to be like, hey guys, Squirtle's back on the scene. This is someone that's done some of the biggest stuff in StarCraft 2, and they're coming back. It's gonna be fun. I hope we have Supernova come back too at some point.
I do, yeah. I really do want those guys to come back. You know, not just as a novelty act. The fact of the matter is, you're coming back to a scene that has a lot less competition in Korea now. That actually offers opportunities. There's still a lot of money available, especially with events like this. You could show up on any given weekend and walk away with enough money for rent after just a couple of maps. That's not a bad deal for anybody, frankly. And we like to give opportunities to a lot of different players here on the show, both South Korean and foreign, of course. And turns out the foreigners pulling their weight today, thanks to Serral, no doubt about it. And there's plenty more where that came from. Feel free to tweet at us using the hashtag Shoutcraft, ladies and gentlemen. That is the hashtag Shoutcraft, and the best tweets will make it onto the stream. Thanks to Olivia for curating and managing those. And, of course, big thanks to all of those who have chosen to subscribe to the rather lively Twitch chat over at twitch.tv/TotalBiscuit. And I'd like to also thank our foreign language casters today. We have this event broadcast in many different languages, including South Korean, French, Russian, German, and Polish.
Covering a lot of the bases.
Indeed.
Good job, everybody.
All right. Without further ado, the next opponent lining up right here for the Finnish king himself. Now, I have to say, Serral's Protoss performance lately has been very impressive. A dominant matchup for him as of late competitively. This is sort of the exact opposite of that. When it comes to facing Terran, he's been having some problems. Can he turn that around against a player the caliber of Ryung?
He'll need to. Ryung, it's kind of fun. You know, we're talking about Squirtle, where Ryung was a player that was at the top of the game in that era as well.
Yes, he was. And still is. You know, he's placing very highly in GSL.
Yeah, he's still doing really well, which is what's so fun about this, is that not many, but some have spanned the eras of StarCraft 2 and found success. And I think even, I mean, I'd love to hear a counter opinion, but I feel like Ryung is in his best form and playing really, really, really well lately.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I don't think there's actually a lot of argument against it. The results sort of speak for themselves when it comes to this sort of thing. He is placing highly. Is he winning tournaments? No. Is he placing highly in tournaments? Yes. Is he consistently doing that? Yes. Is he doing that in one of the most difficult events to be consistent in of all time, the GSL? Yes. Is his current form, his current MMR rating the highest it's ever been? Yeah, it is. He can beat the best on any given day. He has issues closing it out. I think we've known that for years. He was on my team Axiom for several years, and he was a bit of a heartbreaker. Yeah, watching Ryung was heartbreaking because you knew this guy is totally good enough to win it all, and more often than not, he fell just a little short. It's just StarCraft for you.
Was it Sniper? He made it to GSL finals, and he lost to Sniper, right?
Yeah, he was actually in the semifinals. He lost to the eventual winner, Sniper. Very close series. Very close. 3-4.
Well, unfortunately, Sniper is probably the most forgettable GSL champion we've ever had.
Doesn't even play anymore. It was just it was an era at the end of Wings of Liberty where Zerg were incredibly dominant, and despite it didn't really matter how good a Terran you were, you couldn't beat it. You know, and that was why it was a Zerg versus Zerg final. It was a Zerg versus Zerg final at the IPL as well, which was sharing the stage in Vegas with the GSL at that point. It was a Zerg dominant meta, maybe some of the most imbalanced the game's ever been. So to see a player like Ryung, and it was innovation as well at the time, Bogus, who was able to get to the round of 4, and of course we saw Polt get to the round of 4 in IPL 5. Like, those were the caliber of players you needed to be able to even compete, and it still wasn't quite good enough. But Ryung's still around, and he's putting on great performances, and hopefully he'll do here. He'll have to, because Serral is a god. In the southwest position on Mech Depot, first time today seeing this map, in the red trunks playing Terran, it is Ryung. Versus his opponent to the northeast position, the reigning king of the hill with 2 maps under his belt. In the blue trunks from Finland, playing Zerg, it's Serral.
And already we're seeing something slightly different here. I'm not trying to tell you guys this is the first time we've ever seen a CC first opening from a Terran, but it's just not the most go-to right now in TVZ. And he's going to get that fast execution of that expansion with the double gas behind it, so we'll have to see where he's going to take this. Serral, on the other hand, opening up a little bit more conservatively and safe, because it is still, I mean, it's pretty funny. We had that Reaper nerf. It wasn't the most massive nerf. It went from 10 damage on the grenade to 5, which ends up being a big deal in those Ling battles, of course. So a little bit less of the Reaper openings, but they're still lethal. Yeah. A big part of the reason why they were so good was not necessarily because they killed you outright. It was because what you had to do as a Zerg to survive it puts you behind. And even if the Terran, like, you know, had the Reapers surrounded and they have this huge fight and they lose all the Reapers, they just found themselves still in a pretty favorable position. So it's nice seeing that getting shaken up a little bit here.
You know what else is nice to see? Use of skin in tournaments. We do not ban that. Quite a few tournaments do disallow the use of skins. We are not one of them. Considering we're funded by the damn war chest, it would be a bit weird if we were. And this is the new war chest Reaper, which looks quite styling. I think you can very easily still tell it's a Reaper, but it's a nice little spin on the concept.
Looks really cool.
It does.
And you know, that's a fun discussion too, because I'm of the same opinion where it's like the arguments against the skins and I can't tell what's going on, that kind of stuff. Nathanius is very adamant about talking about how if you're a StarCraft 2 pro gamer and you can't tell the difference between, you know, one thing or another because of their skins,
you know, much
then that's
pro
a very
gamer. Yeah.
He has some colorful words for you. But then there's like people like TLO actually, I guess, who's also pretty adamant about how some of the skins do cause complications. So it's a fun back and forth discussion, but ultimately I do feel, at least for now, if this is a big part of the game, and skins, by the way, just in gaming in general, are transformative of scenes. Like, the entire CSGO scene became as big as it did, largely in part because of skins. It's a huge impact.
Yeah, we just had the International, the biggest of all time. What was that funded by? Skins. Funded by the Compendium. Cosmetic items are big business, and we've been sort of crying out for them for a long time in StarCraft, and it might sound weird. Why on earth would consumers cry out for microtransactions? Well, it's options of things to do to further support a game that you're very involved in, you know, and we're not just talking about playing, you know, we're very involved in the competitive side of things. So, unsurprisingly, we would be very much motivated to do that, and the War Chest has funded that, and I've made it clear myself I'm not the biggest fan of the way the War Chest was implemented this time around, and I hope that they do it better next time. I think it's the sort of thing that should have been implemented 5 years ago, but ultimately we are where we are now, and
better late than never.
Yeah, and we can take advantage of that and make a better tournament for you guys and make a better tournament for the players with it. So that works. I'll accept something suboptimal, something I don't necessarily like, to make that happen, because that is just the more important thing. Agreed
across the board. We're going to have the armory finish up here. So these Hellions were hung back to kind of hide what's going on, which is going to be a pretty opening here. But there's, as you said, we're seeing the different phases of Serral. Now, he made less queens in the ZVP matchup, but he is not skimping on queens in the ZVT matchup, and he's got the proper tools. I think Baneling Nest is the one thing I would say right now is lacking. That's kind of a scary one, because the amount of stuff that's about to show up, you're going to need Banelings.
Yeah, you are. And this is a full-on mech build by Ryung right now. He adds Terran Vehicle, Weapon Level 1 and 2 factories. He is going to be pushing with a lot of Hellions. We're probably going to see quite a few Widow Mines out of that. And a positional player like Ryung really loves his tanks. Absolutely does. Has had a lot of success with them. So this is going to be a very interesting thing to deal with here for Serral. He's got a decent number of queens to handle it, though. He's got 8, in fact. That's more than decent.
Yeah. It's interesting from Ryung. He's being very hesitant. Like, a lot of players, when they do this, they rush out and they go for the attack. But Ryung just being happy, fighting back the creep, taking a pretty fast third. Perhaps that's why he's being a little bit more conservative about it. Not willing to really commit to this attack just yet. But it's allowing Serral to, I think, in my opinion, survive an error. His Baneling Nest is just now finishing. If this was a pointed timing attack, just Lings and Queens against this, if there's like 2 medevacs, I think he just dies. I think it's a really tough fight for him. But as it is, he's in actually okay shape.
Yeah. He's all right at the moment. Like I said, the queen count is super key here, but it's the addition of these Thors that's going to make things very interesting. You know, double Thor this early on in the game, and using the medevacs to move them around. That's an unusual choice, but Thors do rip through queens at an incredible rate, and that may very well be an extremely unexpected maneuver. Speaking of unexpected maneuver, this run-by could do a lot of damage here.
Yeah, it's going to get in on that third base here, and it's going to chomp down some of these SCVs at least, but there are some Hellions in the vicinity, and I feel like when you see that number of Hellions, and you're also seeing Hellions at your creep, well, it's too late. It is mech. He knows it now. He better, because there's some Thors, like you said, in this drop going down here, and here come the Banelings. They're going to try to get some massive connections. Do they get picked up? No, they don't. They're getting the connections, though, on the Hellbats behind this.
Goes behind it. Love it. That's a good approach. You know, he knows, look, okay, yeah, the Thors are doing damage, but the threat is at the back, and if I can isolate the threat, then I can isolate the Thors. So that was a really good move. Serral didn't spend a lot to kill some pretty expensive stuff there, and that very clearly didn't work, and I'm actually sort of surprised now we see the tanks. Now we see the tanks. The Thor, it was an interesting gambit. It didn't work. But what would have benefited Ryung so much there is if he had a back supporting line of tanks. That wouldn't have happened that time.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of he was hoping for roaches or something, too, as a follow-up. A lot of players, when they see mech, they start going towards hydras, which is what we do have coming out here, or roaches. But also the nice thing about that attack, yes, Ryung lost everything, but at the end of the day, it's really the 2 Thors that are kind of the hard-to-replace units, and only 2 Thors. If it was like 6 or 7... Total Biscuit, I'd be very concerned, but he just lost 2. So yes, he's behind in supply. I'm not trying to talk about how Ryung's like in this amazing position, but as a mech player, they can always go to their pocket strat, which is just like, okay, I'm going to turtle up, we're going to get the mega army, and I'm going to defend until I win.
Pretty much, and that's totally fine. You know, the 4th base is on the way. That'll become a planetary. Ryung's even using barracks to scout incoming run-bys. Really smart use of building that otherwise would be used. Not so useful, and oh my god. We have 11 swarm hosts coming in right here. The old school answer to mech. The old school answer to turtle play. In this case, the reworked, highly dangerous, but huge investment of the swarm host.
Yeah, it capitalizes on a lot of things like the immobility of mech. That being said, Ryung is going a composition that's a little bit more mobile, not super tank heavy, more Hellbat, more Hellion, and then Thors that can kind of get around and kind of do that. We also saw swarm hosts get deflected. Again, not to go too back on this, but I did just get back from Korea, so you're going to hear the reference quite a bit. But GSL vs. Korea, we saw Mech Terran, some Hellions, by the way, getting some damage here on the right side.
Some good shots. Some very nice shots coming off here. That Queen was nowhere near enough to defend it. That was most of the mineral line getting roasted there. Good investment.
Not bad. A lot of mech players will add Vikings. They'll add Liberators. They'll go towards the air because you can shoot down the swarm host. Now, of course, we don't see that from Ryung. He only has the 1 starport, so it's going to be what's on the ground that deals with it for now.
Yeah, in this case, Seville sort of revealing his hand a little early. He ended up accidentally attacking the scouting barracks, which turned out to be incredibly useful, and alerted Ryung to the presence of swarm hosts. So now needs to get into a position to deal with them because it's going to be a big swarm host push in this direction. He does have tanks in position, and that will be enough. He will lose a building, but that is about it for the time being. And those swarm hosts are basically now useless for a while. It takes 30 seconds to generate 2 more locusts, so they're not constantly spawning. If you watched back in Heart of the Swarm, you probably roll your eyes seeing swarm hosts. They're not the same unit they once were. They don't constantly bring out these free units all the time.
Yep, they require your actions. They require smart decision-making as opposed to just like lethargically just constantly just pooping out things that'll do something for
Incredibly
you. So
boring.
Fun spot. Hellion's going to deflect this light harass on the left side, but it's going to be Serral trying to find, again, Serral's a very harass-oriented Zerg. He's always looking for the weakness. Deflecting
Excellent split from Ryung. Excellent split. Avoids that quite nicely. Again, the scouting barracks proving its worth. Shows a Hydra Lingbane run-by that Ryung pulls out of position to deal with, and the swarm hosts are all primed and ready to do more damage. So you don't want to engage against those units. They're high damage, they're free, but Ryung would love to hunt them down if you can. Bored Banelings, nice scan though. Looks like Ryung was on top of that.
And we're going to have Ultralist Tech, but also I like the timing of the Spire, by the way. You can either go Corruptor there and really chop down the medevacs, or of course go towards Broodlords.
He's getting on top of those swarm hosts from both sides here, and there's Thor support. This could be brutal. And of course, Thors shoot down those flying units really quickly with the missile barrage, but just too much Zerg here right now.
Yeah, he's able to. The hunter becomes the hunted. But what's nice about this?
Evacuate that Thor. And he gets it just in time. Wow.
Hot pickup. Yeah. Use it. Go ahead and repair it. The queen count, by the way, from earlier. Remember them? Well, look at that creep spread. Serral is one of those masterclass Zergs that you don't look at the creep and go, I feel like he could improve upon that. He's one of the best. And I'll tell you what, I'd love it if we had like, if someone out there wants to do this really crazy, stupid thing and just crunch numbers forever. But the stats on when a Zerg has like half the map covered in creep, I feel like they never lose, Total Biscuit. I'm saying it right now. Rion, he's in a great spot. I think he loses. And I think it's because he's just being creeped. He's just being creeped out.
Kind of is, yeah. And, I mean, you just look at the damage these things can do here. Like, tanks are falling to these incredible attacks here from the swarm hosts. And he's not sending them all in at once. You notice that. He's sending in small groups of locusts at a time. He's using full control to get maximum value out of units that otherwise would be very much, press button, things die.
Yeah. The free unit syndrome.
Yeah.
He's always he's actually moving too without the ability to launch them, which is also important.
Oh, this is dangerous.
He's going to be able to squeeze back there, and guess why? Because of that creep. So it's going to be pushed back here from Ryung. Ryung is up on 4 bases as a mech player. It's that 5th base that becomes the, like, I have an army forever type of thing. So we might be in for a long haul. But behind that, it's Ultras coming out with that queen count, high energy. So they're going to be able to just kind of live forever.
Yep.
And then behind that, it's probably going to be a Greater Spire and Broodlords. And that's the part that's really tough for mech, is you have to have enough Thors or Vikings to answer for air, while still having enough punch in the Thors and tanks to deal with the ground, and bouncing between the two is the difficult part.
Yep. And as is becoming abundantly clear, these Blue Flame Hellions are not really up to scratch anymore. They're not going to do the job, especially against these +3 armored Zerg units. This mobile force of Thors is potentially lethal and a great defense against these flying locusts, but once they land, that could be pretty dangerous. Thankfully, he added on high-sec auto-tracking, an upgrade we rarely see, and the Ibex cannon of the Planetary Fortress is able to make short work of that without too much economic damage being done. The Scouting Barracks has finally given its life, but it saw so much in its lifetime, and really that's all we can hope for, isn't it?
It did well. It's helped him secure this 5th base, the tanks being left back there. So that's, you know, ooh. I talked about how I think Ryung's going to die, but if he's going to win this game, it's going to be through him taking that 5th. And that's nice about Mech Depot here, too, is you can go ahead and take that. I mean, look at the 5 bases tucked into that corner.
Yep, you can absolutely do that.
He's pretty safe there. And like you talked about, the mobile defense with the Thors, that has been a nice response here.
Yep, unfortunately, these tanks are going to go down here. There's a big concern, because those Thors can really only be in one place at a time. And my concern right now, you see that Corruptor count the way that it is, you see the tank-heavy composition. The Terran is on borrowed time at the moment. He can't stay on tanks against this. Like, we're looking at Swarm Host Broodlord. That's about as anti-tank a composition as you get.
Yeah. And Cyril's
fusion core on the way.
By the way, too. There's no harass coming up from Ryung. How could he?
He can't. He's defensive.
He's just being beaten to the corner, though.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, because I think with a single medevac and some Blue Flame Hellions, especially with those upgrades, you can do some serious economic damage. But as you said, he's on full defensive mode, and the problem is that lets the Zerg do anything the Zerg wants. And you're seeing slowly but surely, Cyril's banked 4,000 gas. That is Broodlord City on the way up here.
Yeah. Or he could make like 40 mutas. That's obviously the much more risky thing, but I think that's... I feel like Zerg are some of the most like abused players in StarCraft, because I always look at their games and I'm like, just make 50 mutas. Oh my god.
Even a Planetary Fortress cannot withstand firepower of that magnitude. It's even getting to the point where you need building armor here, I think. The amount of damage that's coming out. That Planetary Fortress got wiped off the map. And in the meantime, a 4 Thor drop, how often do you see that, takes out a base in return. Ryung now doing the standard 4 Thor drop harass.
Oh yeah, totally.
Because why not? Actually seeing advanced ballistics, so we're going for Liberator army here. Makes sense considering the Ultralisks, not so sensible considering the Broodlords.
The Ultras were like basically distraction Carnifexes, though. They didn't do much. There's only a couple of them, and then it's like 10 Broodlords behind this. That's actually the real threat.
Yeah, and it's weird that we're seeing Liberators. You already have 21 tanks. Like, you have the firepower to bring this down. You really need to deal with the fact that Broodlords are about to land on you. And I don't think Ryung's realized that. It doesn't seem to have. And down comes yet another wave of units, but that's, this time, very well deflected. But the annoying thing about that is you're gonna lose some units to a wave of locusts like that. You're gonna have to. And those 30 seconds are so crucial. In the meantime, Ultralisk run by, supported by Queens and Hydras, and the repeated healing, the repeated transfuses are keeping the Ultras alive. In comes the Thor drop to deal with this, and that is a lot of firepower, enough to drive that away. But he has to realize there's Vipers being added in the mix here as well. I don't think Ryung is prepared for this Air Zerg army.
He wasn't, and then 7 Vikings just pop. He has the ability to very quickly get there, as you said. So he's not all the way there yet. The nice thing about that, 6 more Broodlords. So I wonder if Cyril's like, you know what? I'm not seeing any air at all. He has Vipers. He still has some Corruptors. So it's not like he's going to be caught completely off guard. But the air battle is going to be interesting. I think Ryung is playing pretty well here. And I have to say, by the way, how cool has the 4 Thor defense been? Like,
really cool.
What a great response. If he didn't have this, I think he would have taken so many more losses.
These are incredibly strong Thors as well. These are 3-3, and they're going to contribute hugely in the upcoming air battle as well. Even without that high-impact payload. Actually, they have it back. They change this every patch. They turn high-impact payload off, and then they put it back, and that's the difference between the spread-out missile attacks and the focused single-target damage. And often spread-out missile attacks are good anyway against a large, bunched-up army. That's a lot of supporting anti-air fire, assuming that the Thors are not forced to deal with the ground units, which generally they're not. Thor targeting now focuses primarily on air, and as a result, I think they're going to be pretty effective here. And with enough Vikings in the mix, with 6 more on the way, and +2 ship weapon, if Serral waits, that could be disastrous for our Zerg.
It could, but 13 Broodlords, by the way. So, I mean, if they get, like, really bunched up or something, that's terrible. They're anchored by queens. I like this. This is like 2 boxers that we're getting to witness firsthand becoming more powerful, more muscly, faster, stronger, bigger. It's I don't know. I don't know who I would give the edge to. The Vikings, of course, have the range, and they're being anchored by those Thors, which are so difficult to deal with as well. But Vipers end up, if the Vikings get too close together, a couple of parasitic bombs, and bye-bye all your Vikings.
Yep. Also the possibility that Vipers pull the Thors out of position, which would be pretty damn ugly as well. There are only 3 Vipers, and Ryung has a lot of ranged firepower. 20 Vikings at 2-3 upgrades, working on the 3 there as well. This is a incredibly powerful set of armies from both players. The Broodlord's actually lacking a bit in upgrades, and Serral realizes this. He's trying to catch up a little bit. That that doesn't make them weak by any stretch. We saw this Planetary Fortress is held up against everything. In the meantime, by the way, 10 more workers just got eliminated. Some more harassed by the Terran. Now, as you can see, Parasitic Bomb being used and a lot of ground support. And look at the Spore Crawlers. That creep spread being used to support the anti-air capabilities of the Zerg.
Yeah, and that's a non-supply way of generating some offense. Like you talked about, abducting those Thors, or in this case, you Vipers. Or Vikings, excuse me, but also the Vikings just can't fly over. That's a no-fly zone. Yep. And I love this, by the way. We have a Baneling and Swarm Host, not quite a run-by, but a harass being levied.
Yeah.
At
Actually
the bottom.
Blocked by the Swarm Host Locust. That could have done a lot more damage than it did. And only 7 workers down, that's fine. Look at how low in economy Serral's are currently running up. Because he's got such a massive bank. Why would you need the drones when you got 6,000 of each resource? You know, that's a 2 remaxes body. And here we go, the big battle. There's nowhere near enough here, I think, for Ryung. Parasitic Bomb! Oh, he kills his own. Oh, great target fire. Ryung kills the parasitic bombed unit. That's a lot of workers that are getting cleaned out here for Ryung, though, and he doesn't have that bank. That's not something you can really afford.
But no Thors. There's no Thors here.
Thors the other side of the map. They're currently dealing with Swarm Hosts, which, again, ever-elusive units. They're not, as you said, backing up this army. This Planetary Fortress is held up against everything that has been thrown at it, but I think it is finally going to fall, even with that building armor upgrade. 80, 90 kill Planetary Fortress before it is finally eliminated.
And you pointed something out, Tobis, that's actually a really big deal. The low econ of Serral.
Oh.
He doesn't need that base over there. He's mining off the other bases, so it's totally okay for him to lose that unsaturated base. And now, the Vikings trying to turn the fight here. A parasitic bomb kind of is deflected back there. But again, Ryung, by the way, impeccable micro. Like you talked about, he actually friendly fired the guy that had the parasitic bomb.
Yeah.
These are trying times. If you've got that kind of virus, you're going to go down.
Yeah. Both sides taking heavy economic damage, but Serral with the bank and the mech player without it. And we've said time and again how difficult it can be to replace mech. Finally, this area is going to get broken down here. The Planetary Fortress will hold for the time being, but he's going to have to... That, I think, is going to be the anchor point for this defense. This is going to be the key fight coming in right here. That Planetary Fortress plus the entire mech might of Ryung versus one Zerg army with maybe 2 more on the way to back that up. There we go.
So pitched up. Oh my god.
Oh, he's taken so much fire. The Thors are moving into position to bring in heavy range fire. But look at the amount of transfuse, trying to keep that front line of Corruptors alive. Ryung has to keep firing, but he can't quite hold here. The supporting fire coming in is massive. A Widow Mine run by attempting to come in as well. Has to borrow them right now. He borrows them. The target fire goes off. Huge damage into the middle of the Queens. A costly fight for Ryung.
I mean, yes, exactly. Costly. On the right side, the Swarm Hosts, remember those guys? They showed up
they're still there.
10 minutes into the game. Here we're at 22, and they're just wreaking havoc. They killed a base that had all the mules on it. They're working on basically the one mining base for Ryung. He's snuck in the left side, and of course that means he's making $1 million off it, but he's fighting on multiple fronts. It is that immobility of mech that is the issue. The Thors carried him here with that really cute, awesome play. But with that costly fight that you talked about, Tolbisky, look at the air. There's just nothing. He's not even making air units.
The Vikings went down. He's relying now on Thors and Widowmines, which may not be the worst idea. It was evidently clear he couldn't hold the air against that many Corruptors with Transfuse.
Yeah. It's lack of bank. I think if you gave Ryung 10,000 minerals right now, I think he would remake the Vikings with us, of course. But I feel like he's making the hard choice of saying, look, I got these Thors, need them for the ground. Widow Mines are inexpensive. If I can get a couple lucky pops against a clumped up Corruptor and Broodlord force, I'm back in this thing.
And we don't want to see tanks being lost, but they are. The Hellbats are proving to be vital defense against these Locusts. But this Ryung's orbital command kind of in place. Interestingly enough, the use of the Locust may be a little bit early there because Ryung's actually able to get a good amount of mule mining off this. This base will die, no doubt, but I think it's going to pay for itself before it does. So we're now moving into position to make sure that it does go down eventually, although attacking slower than expected. There we go, now he's going to go for it. But, you know, that's half the mule timer off of 6 mules. He got the money he needed from this base.
Yep. It's something. I just look at
the bank comparison is just ridiculous.
Supply of Serral, the bank, as you pointed out.
It's ludicrous.
So even in this weird dream world where Ryung like gets the miracle attack and is able to fight off this army, the Remax, he could actually make 25 Ultras or whatever he wants. You know, like he's not even oversaturated on drones. He's at 48.
Ryung marches. He's going for the win right now, and I think he has to. Like, he's got the units to do it. That's 12 fully upgraded Thors, huge amounts of Widow Mines, tanks, and Hellbats with the Medivacs to move around. It's like, you know what? Let's go. Let's go. You can't stop this. This is the hammer of fucking God coming down on your head. You cannot stop it. Just try. See what happens.
All right. Well, he's going to try. If that's the hammer of God, then here comes the sword of the devil as these Broodlords are starting to swing over. Serral's so confident he left behind 4 or 5 of them. He's going to bring over the Air Force. He says, take that base. That's fine. If I kill this army, you are dead. He's going to engage with the Swarm Host.
Oh, wow. Jumps all over the Widow Mines. The Widow Mines don't get deployed here. That doesn't help at all, but the Thor firepower is absolutely massive. Will it be enough? The Hellbats holding off the Broodlords for the time being. The Thor firepower is slowly pushing this back. The Queens are finally fallen, and suddenly Serral's army on the run.
Serral's army has to back up here as the Queen Force, the Matriarchs do fall, but he's able to just kite backwards, and this lack of air ability from Ryung is becoming an issue. Yes, the Thors have fantastic range. Yes, if you bunch up against, you could lose, but remember, the Broodlings have like their own kind of shield mechanic as well.
Yeah.
Die quickly,
but units. That they will. The Hellbats hold them, but the Hellbats die in the process. Ryung's gone for a run by, but the thing is, there's so much money on Serral's part, this doesn't matter. This is just giving Serral more space to build units. Like, those... I think Ryung just needs to repair what he's got right here. You can't lose any of these Thors. They're so valuable, so hard to replace. He's building 4 more refineries. He's backing off at the moment, and he was able to bring that hammer down on a base, but Serral's got more of them, and really, killing bases right now doesn't matter. He's got to kill the army.
Yeah, it's so funny. He's like losing... This run by is amazing, and of course you still got to do it, because it's like, you can't just skip up on it, but he's got
so much money.
8,000 minerals and 8,000 gas. Like, he's got enough for 3 more armies, so...
Yeah.
Ryung's work is cut out for him.
These Broodlords have got to die, and the question is, you know, how do you do it? He doesn't really have the ability to transition into Battlecruiser with Yamato Cannon, which wouldn't be a bad idea to pop some Broodlords. The problem is, of course, they're very expensive, and Corruptors rip through Battlecruisers very quickly. Ryung knows this. Thankfully, he's finally repairing the Thors, because he has to. The Thors are the only thing that's going to keep him in this game. His bases are getting gutted. Those Swarm Hosts have just been a huge problem the entire time. And Ryung, has a lack of mobility. In come the Banelings. They do destroy the front line of Hellbats. The Thors are starting to fall, and I don't know if Ryung can make this happen.
Just a hell of an effort from Ryung.
It is.
He's fighting a losing battle.
And this is going to be it.
Cover the top half map. There's Lings on top of the factories. The Thors are going to back up, but they've lost all their buffers, so everything is hitting Thors right now.
It is, and that is it. Without the buffer, the Thors will finally fall. It was not enough Serral's incredible bank, just too much. A huge Widowmine detonation. If you got one of those earlier and cleaned out the area, that might have mattered. But GG, Serral puts the sword in the heart, and Ryung's mech finally falls in an incredible game. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, very well done. I like the idea on both sides. I think we have to give a little bit of an acknowledgement of, like, Ryung's cool play was in his way of surviving the just aggression of Serral, just constantly multi-prong attacks on one way or the other. Remember, it started with Ling, Baneling, Hydra guys. Go back to that.
Yep.
Then it was a couple of Ultralists, but they were more of a distraction card effects. And then he was just doing Swarm Host. The same 11 or 14 or so Swarm Hosts from the beginning of the game lasted all the way to the end. And I give them, I know it ended with Brute Lords and amazing air dominance, but I give the Swarm Host the MVP star. They're going home, the heroes of that game for me.
Yeah, and how do you deal with that? You know, with the positioning as good as it is, how do you deal with those constantly harassing Swarm Hosts when you know your opponent's not leaving them lying around? You know, do you get Banshees out, maybe with the high rotor speed? Is that how you hunt them down? Well, maybe, but not when there's 30 Corruptors on the map anymore.
Right, and that's why they don't do it, is because it feels like they lose their value pretty quick. I still think with how fast they are, by the way, if you haven't seen, like you just said, that upgrade, the Banshees haul butt, but it's that, and it's like got to be Hellions that run them down, but you're playing a shadow game. It's not Terran that can see where those Swarm Hosts are going to show up, and like you pointed out during the game, Serral was doing this really cool thing where he's not being greedy and grabbing every Swarm Host and launching all of their payload. He's like doing half and half, so if something does chase him down, he's able to say, okay, well, I'll just kite away, because I'm not trying to win with this attack. I'm trying to just do damage to you, and the Swarm Hosts get away.
Death by 1,000 cuts, but in the case of Swarm Hosts, you're seeing, like, Planetary Fortresses pop. I was glad to see Ryung moving towards the high-sec order tracking and the building armor. Not common upgrades, but you need them against Swarm Hosts. It makes a big difference. If he'd maybe been able to get those Widowmine run-bys in earlier and to really take the heart out of the middle of that army, that probably would have done the job, but he wasn't able to do it, and it's very hard to get under that.
Yeah, I feel like the tough thing for mech against Zerg is it has to do, I feel like, a pretty good amount of damage early on, or the Terran has to get away with a cheeky one, like sneak a top left or bottom right hidden base, make it a planetary, so that it's a little bit harder, you know, something like that. There has to be some kind of early game X factor, because if it gets to the mid game and the Zerg just has 4 or 5 bases, has their 15 or so Swarm Hosts, and is teching beyond that, I feel like it's a very difficult game for the Terran player. And any Terran that wins from there, it's because they're just incredible and they do something amazing. It's not because they just, like, you know, went blow for blow and won out. It almost never feels like that's what happens.
Indeed. All right, well, Serral has dispatched 2 high-quality Protoss and a high-quality Terran, so let's see how his ZVZ is a little bit. A matchup that's got an awful lot more exciting over the course of the expansion, a lot more options, and a really big test of skill. Less of a coin flip, I suppose, than most people used to perceive it as. And we have a hell of a player for him to go up against in this particular matchup. An incredibly smart player, an innovative player. It's Rogue.